Hi, I'm Sarah. James, can you pass me the blue blanket over there? I called out in our sunny, cheerful room that was going to be our baby's nursery. The walls were painted a calm pastel green, and there were cute animal stickers everywhere. James and I had spent weeks picking out everything from the crib to the mobiles, making sure it was all perfect. Here you go, babe, James said, handing me the soft blanket with a big smile. We were adding the final touches, feeling both nervous and excited. Do you think he'll like the stars on this blanket? I asked. He's going to love everything, James replied, smoothing the blanket over the little mattress. Can you imagine? In just a few weeks, we'll be here at 2 a.m., trying to get him back to sleep? James laughed and hugged me. As long as I'm with you, I can handle a few sleepless nights. The nursery was almost done. It was a labor of love, showing our journey into parenthood. The shelves were filled with storybooks, plush toys, and framed ultrasound pictures. It was perfect. The next day, after a doctor's appointment, I came home excited to add some new baby clothes to the dresser, but when I walked in, something felt wrong. The silence was too heavy. I dropped my bag and hurried to the nursery, my heart pounding. When I opened the door, I couldn't believe my eyes. The room was empty. Every single item we had picked out was gone: the crib, the blankets, the toys, even the pictures from the walls. It was like our dream for the future had vanished. I stood there, shocked, saying no, 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 as I looked around at the empty room. I rushed to the living room and found a note on the coffee table. It was from Carol, James's mother. My eyes scanned the note, each word making my stomach sink. Sarah and James, I've taken the liberty of donating your nursery items to a charity. There are many people who have nothing, and I know you can easily replace these things. It's for a good cause. You'll understand one day. Love, Carol. Understand? How could I understand? I crumpled the note, my mind racing with disbelief and anger. How could she do this? How could she think it was okay? When James came home, I was pacing, still clutching the crumpled note in my hand. He froze when he saw my face, then his eyes shifted past me to the empty nursery. What happened, Sarah? Where is everything? Your mother happened, I said, shoving the note into his hands. As he read it, I watched his confusion turn to shock, then to anger. This isn't right. She can't just decide this for us. James crumpled the note too, his jaw tightening. She had no right, none at all. We spent the rest of the evening in turmoil. Our joy was gone, replaced by the feeling that something precious had been stolen from us. The nursery, once a place of dreams, now felt cold and empty, a painful reminder of what was taken. We need to talk to her, James. This can't continue, I said, my voice steady with determination as I grabbed my phone. She needs to understand she can't just interfere like this. As the phone rang, my resolve grew stronger. This wasn't just about the baby items, it was about respect. Respect for us, for our new family, and for the choices we made. I was ready to fight for that. After 2 rings, Carol answered. Hello? Carol, we need to talk about what you did with our nursery, I said, my voice firm and direct. Oh, hello, dear. Yes, I was just about to call you. I dropped off the nursery items at the charity this morning. They were so grateful, you know. Carol, why didn't you ask us first? That was for our baby. You took everything, I said, my words sharp with hurt and disbelief. There was a pause. I did it for a good cause. Sarah, you can always buy more stuff, can't you? That's not the point, Carol, James chimed in, his voice just as firm. Those were our choices, our preparations for our child. You had no right to make that decision for us. Carol sighed on the other end, her tone dismissive. James, when you see the bigger picture, you'll understand. There are so many families who have nothing. We're blessed, and we should help where we can. I thought you'd be proud. I'm not proud, Mom. I'm hurt. You crossed a line, James said, his frustration clear. I know you're upset, but you're overreacting. You can easily replace everything. I just thought it was wasteful to let all those new things sit there when others could use them now. You can set up the nursery again, Carol said, her voice steady, as if she was convinced she'd done the right thing. That's not your decision to make, Carol, I snapped, anger surging through me, gripping the phone tighter. You've taken something from us that we can never get back, the excitement and joy of preparing for our child. How can you not see that? There was a long silence on the other end before she finally responded. Sarah, James, I did what I thought was best. If you're this upset over a few items, I'll help you replace them, but I won't apologize for helping those in need. That's not what this is about, Carol, I replied, shaking my head even though she couldn't see me. It's about respect and boundaries. James took a deep breath, sounding exhausted as he spoke, more to himself than to his mother. We'll talk more about this later, Mom. Right now, we need some space. As we hung up, the air between us felt thick with tension. It wasn't just about the missing nursery items. It was about the deeper issue of our feelings and choices being completely disregarded. James, what are we going to do? I asked, feeling drained. How do we make her understand? We set boundaries, Sarah, clear, firm boundaries. It's the only way, James said, his voice resolute, as if he'd made up his mind. That night, we sat down and wrote a letter to Carol, carefully outlining our feelings and the boundaries we needed to establish. It wasn't just about the nursery, it was about declaring our independence as a family. We valued her as part of our lives, but we couldn't allow her to overstep the way she had. We need to make sure this never happens again, for our sanity and for the well-being of our family, I said, sealing the envelope. Yes, James agreed, taking my hand, for our family. In this emotionally difficult time, we found comfort in the support of others. James made the first call to his Aunt Susan, who had always been a strong presence in our lives. His voice was hesitant but hopeful. Hey, Mom, he began, speaking to his aunt as we both sought a way forward together. We had a bit of a situation at home, James explained. It's about the nursery. Susan's response was immediate and full of empathy. Oh, you two must be devastated. What can I do to help? Her kind words felt like a balm, and soon, our community began to rally around us. Friends and family didn't just offer sympathy, they showed up with real support. Baby items started arriving, some brand new, others lovingly handed down, each with its own story and meaning attached. One afternoon, our neighbor Linda, whom we had barely spoken to before, arrived with a beautiful hand-knit blanket. I heard what happened, dear, she said, her eyes soft with understanding. I wanted to give you something made with love, something that can't be taken away so easily. James and I spent our evenings sorting through the items, each piece not only helping to rebuild the nursery but also healing our spirits. The response from our community was overwhelming, each act of kindness weaving a tapestry of support that held us up during this challenging time. We're so lucky to have people who care about us, James murmured one evening as we set up a new crib, donated by my cousin Ellie. I know, I replied, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. It's amazing how much love there is around us. The nursery slowly came together again, different from the first, but filled with even more love, if that was possible. One Saturday, we invited everyone who had helped us to a small barbecue in our backyard to express our immense gratitude. The afternoon was filled with laughter, stories, and the smell of grilled food. As children played in the yard, Ellie came up to me with a plate of food, smiling. How are you holding up, Sarah? She asked. I looked around at the gathering of friends and family. Better now. It's hard to stay down when you have this much support. That's what family and friends are for, she said, giving me a gentle hug. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, James and I stood side by side, watching our loved ones. This network of support hadn't just helped us rebuild the nursery, it had strengthened our relationships with the people who cared about us. It's like we're getting a second chance, James said, squeezing my hand. Yes, I agreed, leaning into him. And this time, it's built on the strength of all these wonderful people behind us. The emotional strain from Carol's betrayal had been real, but so was the power of community. As we prepared once again for the arrival of our baby, we knew that no matter the challenges ahead, we had a circle of love and support that would always carry us through. The energy in our home had shifted. The nursery was once again filled, not just with baby essentials, but with the warmth and love of our extended family. Yet James and I both knew that to truly move forward, we needed to address the root of the issue, Carol's intrusion into our lives. One quiet evening after dinner, we sat down to talk. James and I sat down to discuss what to do next. We can't let this happen again, Sarah, he said. We need to set boundaries that Carol will understand and respect. I agreed, feeling the weight of the decision. I agree. It's about protecting our family and our peace. Together, we made a list of boundaries and the consequences if they were crossed. It was important to make sure our family's space and decisions were respected in the future. The next day, we invited Carol over, hoping to explain our new boundaries calmly. When she arrived and sat down, James started, Mom, we need to talk about what happened with the nursery and how we move forward. Carol smiled, probably thinking this was a friendly chat, but her smile faded as James continued, Sarah and I have decided to set some boundaries. We need our family space and decisions to be respected. I spoke next, keeping my voice steady despite my emotions. We appreciate your intentions, Carol, but in the future, we need you to ask us before making decisions that affect us or our home. It's important for our peace of mind. Carol looked confused. But I was just trying to help. I don't see why there need to be such strict rules between family. It's not about rules, Carol, I replied. It's about respect. Carol sighed and shook her head. I think you're overreacting. I haven't done anything wrong. James's tone was firm. Mom, whether you think it was wrong or not isn't the point. It hurt us and broke our trust. We're setting these boundaries to keep our relationship healthy. Carol seemed like she might argue, but then she just nodded. If that's what you need, I'll try to respect it, though I still think it's unnecessary. After she left, there was a tense feeling in the air, but also a sense of clarity. James and I knew where we stood, and we were united. In the weeks that followed, as we prepared for our baby's arrival, our bond grew stronger. Every decision and preparation was made with mutual respect and care. It wasn't just about setting up a home for our child anymore, it was about building a strong, united front as parents. We're doing the right thing, aren't we? I asked. We're doing the right thing, aren't we? James asked one night as we reviewed everything again. Absolutely, I assured him, my hand resting on my growing belly. We're making sure our son comes into a world where his parents not only love him but also stand up for what's right. The nursery was calm, bathed in the soft afternoon sunlight. I rocked gently in the new glider, my eyes taking in the vibrant murals and shelves stocked with books and toys, each a symbol of the community's love and our own determination. Holding our baby boy in my arms, the troubles of the past felt both distant and defining. James placed a gentle hand on our son's head, his face showing a mix of wonder and deep thought. Can you believe we're actually here? He whispered. I smiled, looking around the serene room. It feels like a dream, but I know the journey to get here was very real. We went through a storm that tested our strength and taught us what it means to be a family. Reflecting on the situation with Carol, it was clear how much it had influenced our approach to relationships and boundaries. It's strange, I said aloud, how such a painful experience led us to a place of strength. Setting those boundaries with your mom was hard, but it feels right. James nodded thoughtfully. It taught us how to protect what's important and stand up for our family. I think it's made us stronger, not just as a couple, but as parents. As the day turned to evening and the first stars appeared outside the nursery window, James and I shared a quiet moment of gratitude. We were thankful for the challenges that taught us, for the community that supported us, and for the future we were ready to embrace as a united and strong family. And that's the end of our story, folks. I'd love to hear from you. If you were in Sarah and James's shoes, would you have set the same boundaries with Carol or handled it differently? This situation really tests the balance between family ties and personal autonomy.
Please, honey, Grandma really needs you right now. She's not feeling well at all. My mother's voice trembled through the phone, thick with what I now realize was nothing but fake concern. At that moment, though, I didn't doubt her words. I was sitting in my small apartment in Cincinnati, completely surrounded by neatly packed luggage. I had been preparing for our long-awaited family cruise, our first real vacation together in years. Excitement had been bubbling inside me for weeks, but the moment I heard those words, my joy quickly turned into worry. Of course, I'll stay, I replied without hesitation. The cruise isn't important if Grandma needs me. I meant those words. I truly did. But I had no idea that within just a few hours, they would come back to haunt me in the most painful way imaginable. My name is Maud Adams, and I'm 29 years old. My whole life, I have always tried to be the dependable one. The daughter who could be trusted to step up when things got tough. I was the one who made sacrifices, the one who never said no when my family needed me. But I never thought that my loyalty, my love for them, would be tested in such a cruel way. For months, I had been looking forward to this vacation. It was supposed to be a chance for us all to relax and reconnect, my parents, my younger sister Julia, and a few of our close relatives. I had even taken time off work, carefully planned my schedule, and bought brand new summer clothes just for the trip. But when my mother called, saying Grandma had been taken to the hospital, all those plans disappeared from my mind. I didn't even think twice about canceling. That evening, as I drove to the hospital, my phone buzzed with a notification. At a red light, I glanced at the screen and felt my heart slam against my ribs. Julia had posted a photo on social media. My breath caught in my throat as I stared at the image, my fingers tightening around the steering wheel. It was a picture of my entire family, Mom, Dad, Julia, my aunts, my uncles, all standing together on the deck of a cruise ship, dressed in their vacation outfits, holding up champagne glasses and a toast. Their smiles were wide, full of joy and celebration. The caption beneath the photo hit me like a slap in the face. Best vacation ever. So blessed to have such an amazing family. Family time. I pulled the car over to the side of the road, my hands shaking. My chest tightened as I reread the caption, as if seeing it again would somehow make it less real. They had lied to me. They had deliberately planned this trip without me. They had used my love for my grandmother against me, feeding me a fake story just to make sure I stayed behind. My heart pounded in disbelief. My mind raced with questions.
Why?
Why would they do this? Why would they go so far to exclude me? What had I done to deserve this kind of betrayal? Swallowing hard, I tried to calm myself down. Maybe there was some kind of mistake. Maybe, just maybe, I had misunderstood something. I forced myself to keep driving, still holding on to a sliver of hope. But when I arrived at the hospital, reality crashed down on me in the cruelest way. There was no record of my grandmother being admitted. No emergency. No illness. No reason for me to be here at all. I felt my stomach drop. A wave of nausea rolled through me as I pulled out my phone and frantically called my parents. Straight to voicemail. Again and again. No answer. My hands were cold, my body numb. I switched to texting, sending message after message. Nothing. Then, in a desperate attempt, I checked Julia's social media again. She had blocked me. Blocked me within minutes of posting that photo. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. The betrayal was so sharp, so sudden, that it felt like I had been physically struck. My own family, the people I had always stood by, the ones I had sacrificed for, had thrown me away without a second thought. They didn't want me there. And they had gone to great lengths to make sure I wouldn't be. I stood there in the middle of that hospital hallway, my phone clutched tightly in my trembling hand, as the truth settled in. I wasn't part of their family. At least, not in the way I had always believed. And for the first time in my life, I realized that maybe, just maybe, I had spent too many years being loyal to people who didn't deserve it. I drove toward Grandma's house, my hands gripping the steering wheel as tears blurred my vision. My heart ached, my mind raced, and my chest felt so tight that it was almost hard to breathe.
How could they do this to me?
My own family, people I had trusted my whole life, had betrayed me in a way I never could have imagined. As I turned onto her quiet street, I was expecting darkness, silence, something that would confirm the terrible lie I had been fed. But instead, to my surprise, the lights in Grandma's house were on. For a brief moment, I hesitated. Maybe they had just discharged her from the hospital? Maybe there was some logical explanation, something I was missing. But deep down, I already knew the truth. With shaky hands, I parked the car, climbed out, and made my way to her front door. My heart pounded as I knocked, my pulse loud in my ears. A few seconds later, the door opened. And there she was, standing in the doorway, perfectly healthy. No signs of illness. No hospital bracelets, no exhaustion, nothing to indicate that she had just been through a medical emergency. She looked at me, her expression shifting from surprise to concern. "Maud, what's wrong, sweetheart?" she asked, pulling me into a warm embrace. The familiar scent of her lavender perfume washed over me, making the lump in my throat even harder to swallow. The moment her arms wrapped around me, the dam inside me broke. The tears I had been holding back spilled freely down my face. Inside, we sat in her cozy living room, where everything felt the same as it always had: safe, comforting, familiar. But nothing felt the same in my heart. And so I told her everything. The cruise, the lies, the social media posts that had shattered my world in a single moment. My voice shook as I spoke, my hands trembling as I wiped at my wet cheeks. "I just don't understand," I whispered, staring down at my lap. "Why would they do this to me? Why lie about you being sick?" Grandma's face darkened with disappointment. She let out a slow, deep sigh, the kind that spoke of old wounds and painful truths. She had always treated me and my younger sister, Julia, equally. But our parents? That was a different story. Growing up in Cincinnati, I had learned the hard way that no matter what I did, I would always be second in their eyes. When Julia wanted dance lessons, they somehow found the money. But when I needed help with college tuition, I had to take out loans and work extra shifts just to get by. I thought about all the times I had visited Grandma over the years, helping her with groceries, taking her to doctor's appointments, or just sitting with her as we flipped through old photo albums, sharing memories. Julia rarely visited. And when she did, it was usually because she needed something: money, favors, attention. Yet, somehow, she was still the golden child in our parents' eyes. "Your mother called me last week," Grandma said finally, her voice tight with anger. "She asked me to play along if you came by. She wanted me to pretend I had been in the hospital." I felt my body tense. "What?" I refused, of course. I told her I wouldn't lie to you. She shook her head in disgust. But I had no idea they would actually go through with it. My heart pounded as the reality of it all sank in. This wasn't just some last-minute change of plans. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding. They had planned this. The cruise wasn't cheap, nearly $3,000 per person for a week-long Caribbean vacation. I had saved for months, working extra hours at the accounting firm where I worked just to afford my ticket. And now I couldn't help but wonder, had they ever planned on including me at all? Had my ticket money somehow helped fund someone else's cabin? The thought made my stomach twist. I let out a shaky breath and stared down at my hands. "You know what hurts the most?" I whispered. They didn't even need some elaborate excuse. They could have just told me they didn't want me there. It would have hurt, but at least it would have been honest. I swallowed the lump in my throat and looked up at Grandma, my voice breaking. "Instead, they used you. They knew how much I love you, how much I care, and they used that to manipulate me." Grandma reached for my hand, her grip surprisingly strong despite her age. Her eyes, full of wisdom and kindness, locked onto mine. "Sometimes, people show you exactly who they are, even when they think they're hiding it," she said softly. I felt my breath hitch. "The question is, sweetheart, what are you going to do with that knowledge?" Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. And for the first time, I realized I had a choice. I could keep chasing after a family that had never truly valued me, or I could finally walk away. I looked up at Grandma and saw something strong and determined in her eyes. I had no idea she had been paying close attention to our family all these years, watching everything more closely than any of us realized. And she had plans of her own. As we sat in her warm living room, my phone buzzed again. I hesitated before picking it up, my heart still aching from everything I had just discovered. It was a message in the family group chat. My cousin, Sam, had sent a bunch of vacation photos, not realizing I had been left behind. My stomach dropped as I scrolled through the pictures. There was Julia, smiling in the sundress I had helped her pick out for the trip. My parents were lounging by the pool, drinks in their hands, looking relaxed and happy. The whole family was gathered at a fancy dinner, dressed up and laughing together. But one picture made my breath catch. It was my mom. She was wearing a diamond necklace, the one Grandma had given her years ago. A necklace that was supposed to be passed down to both her daughters when they turned 31. I turned my phone toward Grandma, my voice shaking. "She gave it to Julia already, didn't she?" I asked. "Even though I'm the older one? Even though we were supposed to share it?" Grandma leaned in to look at the photo, her face darkening. She let out a slow breath before speaking. That necklace has been in our family for 3 generations, she said quietly. Your great-grandmother split her jewelry between her daughters equally. That's why I gave it to your mother with clear instructions. It was meant to be shared fairly between you and Julia. But what she told me next made my blood turn cold. The cruise hadn't been paid for by my parents at all. 3 months ago, Grandma had given them $20,000 to plan a family vacation. She had told them clearly that the money was meant for all of us, to enjoy together as a family. Instead, they had used my share to upgrade their own cabins, book extra excursions, and make their trip even more luxurious. I felt my whole body go numb. Grandma's voice was heavy with disappointment. I've been watching, she admitted. For years, I've seen how they treat you differently. I kept hoping they would change. That one day, they'd realize how unfair they were being. But this is the last straw. She stood up and walked to her desk. After a moment of searching, she pulled out a thick manila envelope and held it in her hands. I wasn't going to show you this yet, she said, her voice firm. But you need to know. She handed it to me, and I carefully opened it. Inside were years' worth of proof, bank statements, photos, emails, and handwritten notes. Records of every time they had favored Julia over me. Every time they had taken advantage of my kindness. Every dollar they had spent differently between us. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages. It wasn't just in my head. It wasn't just a feeling. The truth had been right in front of me all along. I read through the papers, my hands shaking. The truth was right there in black and white. It wasn't just in my head. It had been real all along. The favoritism, the unfairness, the way they always put Julia first, it had all been done on purpose, over and over again. But why? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Years of doubt, gaslighting, and denial crashed down on me all at once. Why did they always make me feel like I was imagining it? Grandma's eyes flashed with a fire I had never seen before. Because that's what people do when they know they're wrong, she said firmly. They make you question yourself. They twist things around so you doubt what you see and feel.
But not anymore, Maud.
Not anymore. The family cruise was set to last 8 days. The next morning, as I sat in my apartment in Cincinnati, going through Grandma's documents, my phone lit up with a message from Julia. Mom said you're spreading lies about us. Why can't you just be happy for once instead of trying to ruin everything? I stared at the words on my screen, my stomach twisting with anger. Even after everything they had done, they were still trying to make me the villain. For years, I had stayed quiet. I had swallowed my pain, let them walk all over me, convinced myself that if I just tried harder, they would finally treat me as part of the family. But this time, I wasn't going to stay silent. Instead of responding to Julia, I did something I had never dared to do before. I posted the truth on social media. Funny how being lied to about my grandmother being hospitalized just so my family could exclude me from a vacation somehow makes me the problem, I wrote. Then, I attached the very same photo Julia had posted, the one where she and the rest of my family were celebrating on the cruise. Even funnier how the cruise was paid for with money that was meant to include me. Within minutes, my post exploded with reactions. Friends and family who had known us for years commented in shock. Some of my cousins, who hadn't realized what had really happened, started messaging me privately, sharing their own memories, moments they had noticed how differently I was treated but hadn't put the pieces together before. Then my phone rang. It was my father. I almost didn't answer. But Grandma's words echoed in my mind. Stand your ground. You've done nothing wrong. Taking a deep breath, I picked up. His voice was cold. Take down that post immediately. No, Dad. My voice was steady, despite the storm raging inside me. You embarrassed this family when you lied about Grandma being sick. When you took her money meant for all of us, and used it to cut me out. That's what should embarrass you. That's not how it happened, he snapped. We needed a break from your constant. He stopped mid-sentence. My constant what, Dad? I pressed. My constant reliability? My constant help with Grandma? My constant effort to be part of this family despite how you treat me? Silence. Then, when he finally spoke again, his tone had changed. It was lower, harsher. If you don't take down that post and apologize for your lies, you'll regret it. A chill ran down my spine. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you, he said. Your mother and I have protected you all these years. We've kept certain things from you. If you want to start a war, fine. But remember, you're not the only one who can tell stories. Then the line went dead. I sat there, my heart pounding. What had he meant? What things had they protected me from? What stories could they possibly tell? My hands were shaking as I dialed Grandma's number. She answered on the first ring. They're trying to scare me, I whispered. I told Grandma what Dad had said, that they had been protecting me from something but refused to say what. She was silent for a long time. Then finally she spoke. Go to your email, she said. I'm sending you something. It's time you knew everything. A nervous feeling settled in my stomach as I grabbed my laptop and opened my inbox. My hands trembled slightly as I clicked on Grandma's message. I had a strong feeling that whatever was in this email was much bigger than just a family cruise. And judging by the serious tone in Grandma's voice, my parents had every reason to be afraid of what I was about to discover. Inside the email was a scanned document, one that made my breath catch the moment I read the title. It was a trust agreement, dated 26 years ago. According to the paperwork, my grandfather, my mother's father, had left behind a significant fortune before he passed away. The money was supposed to be divided equally among all his grandchildren when they turned 31. The trust was worth over $3 million. I felt my stomach drop as I continued reading. Attached to the email were bank statements, dozens of them, showing years of withdrawals from the trust. And every single one of them had gone toward Julia. Her dance lessons, her private school education, her college tuition, even her recent wedding. Money that was supposed to be mine had been spent on her, little by little, until there was barely anything left. My chest tightened as the realization hit me like a freight train. They've been stealing from you since you were 4 years old, Grandma said over the phone, her voice full of quiet anger. I could barely find my voice.
How?
Your mother convinced the trustee, her brother, Olivier, to give her early access to your portion, she explained. She claimed it was for your benefit, but as you can see, they spent it all on Julia. I stared at the numbers on the screen, my heart pounding. Over $500,000 had been taken from me. And while Julia had lived comfortably, I had worked multiple jobs to put myself through college. Just then, another email came through. This time it was from my uncle Olivier. My hands shook as I opened it. Maud, I can't stay silent anymore. What they did with the cruise money was the last straw. I've attached documentation of every withdrawal they made from your trust.
I'm so sorry.
I should have stopped them years ago. I scrolled down to the attached files. What I found made my blood run cold. My parents hadn't just used my trust fund to support Julia. They had stolen from it for themselves. Luxury vacations, expensive purchases, personal investments. The cruise was just the latest example of their long-running scheme. I clenched my jaw, my hands tightening into fists. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked Grandma, trying to process the weight of this betrayal. I only discovered the full extent of it recently, she admitted. When I confronted your mother about it last month, she swore they'd pay it all back. That's when I gave them the money for the cruise. I froze. Wait, you gave them that money on purpose? It was a test, Maud.
Her voice was firm.
I wanted to see if they'd finally do the right thing. I let out a bitter laugh. And they failed. Spectacularly. Yes, Grandma said. But their failure gave us exactly what we needed, proof. I took a deep breath, my mind racing. Uncle Olivier has agreed to testify about how they manipulated the trust, she continued. And with my records and the cruise incident, we have enough to take legal action. I exhaled slowly, my fingers still gripping the edges of my laptop. For years, I had accepted their mistreatment. I had convinced myself that maybe I was overreacting, that maybe I just wasn't good enough. But now I had proof. And I was done being their victim. I took a deep breath, my shock fading as a new feeling took over. Determination. Even better than that, Grandma said, her voice firm. We can make sure they never hurt you again. She told me to check the second attachment in her email. My fingers were shaky as I clicked it open.
What I saw made me gasp.
It was Grandma's will, recently updated. She had made me the sole heir to her estate. But that wasn't all. Her estate included controlling ownership of the family business, the very company where my father worked as CEO. Grandma's voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. They're about to learn that their actions have consequences. The next morning, I met Uncle Olivier at a small cafe in downtown Cincinnati. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, hands slightly shaking as he slid a thick folder across the table. These are copies of every document, every transaction, he said quietly. I've already sent everything to the family attorney. I flipped through the papers, my stomach tightening with every page. Years of financial lies, manipulation, and stolen money, all laid out in black and white. What are they saying? I asked, knowing my parents wouldn't go down without a fight. Uncle Olivier let out a bitter laugh. They're claiming it was all for your own good, that they were protecting you from having too much money at a young age. I clenched my jaw. Unbelievable. He nodded, then pulled out another document, his expression turning even more serious. But I found something else, he said. Something they don't know I know about. I leaned forward as he placed a new set of papers in front of me. It showed a series of recent money transfers.
To an offshore account.
A chill ran through me. They're planning to leave the country, Maud. I stared at him, my pulse pounding. They've been moving money around, preparing for something. The cruise wasn't just a vacation, it was a test run. They were checking if their passports would raise any red flags before they disappear for good. I felt my blood turn ice cold. And Julia? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Uncle Olivier's face darkened. She's in on it. She's been helping them set up accounts in her name to hide the money. At that exact moment, my phone buzzed. A text. From Julia. I know what you're doing. You've always been jealous of me, and now you're trying to ruin everything. Well, guess what? You're too late. By the time you figure it out, we'll be gone, and you'll have nothing. I turned the screen toward Uncle Olivier. His face paled. They're moving faster than I thought, he said. We need to act now. I didn't hesitate. I called Grandma immediately. She answered on the first ring, as if she had been waiting. They're at the family company right now, she said without any greeting. Your father is cleaning out his office. Security just called me. My breath caught. Can they stop him? Grandma's voice was calm but firm. Better. I already called the police. And the FBI. Financial Crimes Division. They're on their way. I gripped the phone tighter, my heart racing. But Maud, she continued, you need to get down there. You're the controlling shareholder now. The paperwork was filed first thing this morning. I swallowed hard. It was time to end this. I stood up so fast that my chair scraped against the floor. They don't know that yet, do they? I said to Uncle Olivier. That's our advantage. We need to get there before they destroy any evidence. Your documents prove the theft, but who knows what else they've been hiding? As I rushed to my car, my phone buzzed again. A text from my mother. You ungrateful child. After everything we've done for you, you'll regret this. But for the first time, her threats didn't scare me. I had the truth on my side. And more importantly, I had nothing left to lose. The confrontation. I arrived at the company headquarters just in time to see my parents walking out of the building, carrying boxes from my father's office. Julia was with them. She looked nervous, glancing around as if expecting something to happen. They all froze the moment I stepped out of my car. My father straightened his shoulders, trying to regain his usual commanding presence. What are you doing here? He demanded, his voice sharp. But I saw the fear in his eyes. I smiled coldly. Funny, I was about to ask you the same thing, I replied. Especially since you're removing items from my company without authorization. Julia let out a short laugh. Your company?
What are you talking about?
I pulled out my phone and held up the screen. Grandma transferred her controlling shares to me this morning. That makes me the majority owner. And as the new boss, I'd love to know what's in those boxes. Could it be evidence of how you stole from my trust fund? My mother's face went pale. Behind them, sirens blared. Police cars pulled into the parking lot, lights flashing. FBI agents stepped out of unmarked vehicles. And then I saw Uncle Olivier's car pull up. Grandma was in the passenger seat, watching everything unfold.
Panic set in.
My mother's voice trembled. "You don't understand," she pleaded. "Everything we did was for this family." I shook my head.
No.
"Everything you did was for Julia. And now, you were planning to run away with what's left of my money." I turned to my sister. "So, Julia, did you enjoy the cruise?" I asked. "Was it worth it?" Her face crumpled. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Maud, please." But it was too late. The FBI agents closed in. My father grabbed Julia's arm, trying to pull her away, but they were surrounded. The truth had finally caught up with them. 4 months later, I sat with Grandma in her garden, sipping coffee as the crisp autumn air rustled the golden leaves around us.
So much had changed.
The FBI's investigation had uncovered even more than we expected. My parents hadn't just stolen from my trust fund, they had embezzled money from the company, too. Now, they were facing federal charges. Multiple lawsuits had been filed by shareholders, and everything they had built was falling apart. Julia had cut a deal with prosecutors, agreeing to testify in exchange for immunity. She had moved to Michigan, forced to finally support herself without our parents' financial help. Her last message to me had been a long apology. But some wounds ran too deep for simple words to fix. Grandma took a slow sip of her coffee, watching the leaves drift to the ground. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "your grandfather would be proud of how you handled everything. He always said money reveals people's true character." I nodded, staring out at the trees, thinking about everything that had happened. And he had been right. I had made big changes at the company. Under my leadership, we started a scholarship program for employees' children and created a clear and honest financial system. The business was doing better than ever, this time built on honesty instead of lies. I never wanted any of this, I admitted. I just wanted to be treated fairly. Grandma reached over and gently squeezed my hand. "Sometimes, life's biggest blessings come disguised as its hardest challenges," she said. "You took their betrayal and turned it into something good." She was right. I had found my strength, my purpose, and most importantly, my self-worth. That cruise they took without me? It wasn't the vacation of a lifetime after all. It was the beginning of their downfall, and the start of my new life. Growing up in our small one-story house, I quickly learned that my sister, Emma, was different or special, as my parents liked to say. I was 7 when she was born, and from that moment on, everything in our home revolved around her fragile health. "Kelly, close that window right now." Mom would yell from downstairs. "Your sister might catch a cold." This was the daily routine in our house, a constant reminder that keeping Emma safe and healthy was the most important thing for everyone. I first realized how different our roles were when I was 13. Emma had just started elementary school, and one day, she came home with a runny nose. It wasn't serious, but you'd think it was something much worse based on my parents' reaction. "This is your fault, Kelly." Dad's words hit me like a knife. "You must have left the door open too long when you left for school this morning." I wanted to say that Emma probably caught it from one of her classmates, like any normal kid would. But I knew better than to argue. Instead, I just nodded and accepted my punishment, being grounded for the weekend. That same year, Mom started giving me more chores. While other kids played after school, I was learning how to dust furniture, vacuum carpets, and even do the laundry. "But Mom, why doesn't Emma have to help?" I asked one day, watching my sister relax on the couch, glued to the TV, while I folded a mountain of clothes. Mom's answer was quick and firm. "Your sister has a weak immune system, Kelly. The doctors say she shouldn't overwork herself. Besides, you're already so good at these things." And that's how life went. If something needed to be done, I did it. If something went wrong, it was my fault. When Emma got a bad grade in math in 3rd grade, Dad grounded me for a week, because I should have helped her study better. When she broke Mom's favorite coffee mug, I got blamed for not watching her closely enough. No matter what happened, I was always the one who had to take the fall. I remember one time that really frustrated me. Emma was 11 and I was 17. She took my favorite sweater without asking and spilled juice all over it. When I told Mom, she just sighed and said, "Kelly, you should have kept it somewhere she couldn't reach. You know how careless she is." That was the moment I started dreaming about college, about getting away. I focused completely on my studies because I knew that education was my way out. Whenever I felt angry about how unfair things were at home, I used that energy to study harder. My teachers noticed my effort, and my grades were excellent. But at home, even my success was used to make Emma look better. "See how easy it is for Kelly?" Mom would tell Emma. "You just need to try harder, sweetie." But Emma never had to try harder. There was always an excuse for why she couldn't do things, and I was always expected to pick up the slack. The day I graduated high school, everything changed. I had already accepted that college wasn't in my future. We didn't have much money, and I assumed any savings would go toward Emma's education. I had been looking at job listings, planning to work at a local diner while taking a few communities college classes. That evening, after the graduation ceremonies, Mom and Dad called me into the living room. Emma was on the couch as usual, playing on her phone. "Kelly, sit down," Dad said, his voice more serious than usual. "We need to talk about your future." My stomach tightened. Here it comes, I thought. The lecture about responsibility, about helping the family, about putting my dreams on hold. Mom reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "We've been saving," she said, sliding it across the coffee table. "Since you were little." My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a bank statement with my name on it, enough money to pay for 5 years at a state college. But I thought. I stammered, looking at them in shock. "We can see how hard you work," Mom said, glancing briefly at Emma, who was pretending not to listen. "And, Emma, well, college might not be in her future. We thought this money would be better spent on you." I was speechless. For the first time in my life, I was getting something that Emma wasn't. It felt strange, almost wrong after all these years. But then Dad's tone changed. "We need you to promise us something," he said, leaning forward, his elbows on his knees. "When you finish college and get a good job, you'll help the family. Don't forget about your sister." "Of course," I said quickly, still too shocked to process everything. "I promise," I said. Emma suddenly got up and stormed out of the room, slamming her door behind her. Mom sighed but didn't go after her, which was surprising. Usually, they would rush to comfort her no matter what. That fall, I packed my bags and left for state college, 3 states away. The distance felt like freedom. For the first time in my life, I could open windows without worrying about someone catching a cold. I could study without being interrupted to do chores or babysit Emma. 3 months before graduation, I got an offer I couldn't turn down, a job at Fidelity Investments, one of the top firms in the city. The salary was great and the opportunity was too good to pass up. When I told my parents, they actually took it well and didn't pressure me to come back home. I found a nice apartment near my office and settled into my new life. I called home every weekend, keeping in touch. Our conversations mostly revolved around Emma, how she was still trying to find herself after high school. She wasn't working, wasn't in college, just existing. But for the first time, I wasn't expected to fix it. For years into my job, Mom called with that voice, the one she used when she wanted something. I was reviewing reports when my phone lit up with her name. "Kelly, honey," she said sweetly. "You know Emma's been struggling to find a job." I closed my eyes, already knowing where this was going. "Your company is so successful," she continued. "Couldn't you put in a good word for your sister? Maybe help her get a job there? She's very smart, you know." My stomach tightened. How could I explain that Emma, who had never worked a day in her life and hadn't gone to college, wouldn't even pass the first round of applications at a firm like Fidelity Investments? "Well," I said carefully, "we do have some openings. Let me send over the applications so Emma can check the requirements." That evening, I forwarded the standard application to Emma's email. The job description was clear. Bachelor's degree required. proficiency in SAP and Oracle systems, fluent in one language, English, minimum 6 years of relevant experience preferred. After that, Mom never brought up Emma getting a job at my company again. Life moved on. I worked hard, got promoted twice, and started saving up. I even began thinking about buying my own place. No more rent, just a home of my own. 3 years later, I decided to visit home for the first time in months. When I pulled up to the house, it looked smaller than I remembered. I noticed the paint peeling in some places. Emma was still living there, stretched out on the same couch, scrolling through her phone, just like when we were teenagers. Over dinner, I share my plans. "I've been saving up," I said, pushing my peas around my plate. "I'm thinking about buying an apartment. The market is good right now, and with my credit score, I could get a decent mortgage rate." The table went silent. Mom and Dad exchanged glances, and Emma suddenly became very focused on her mashed potatoes. A week later, Mom called me. This time, her voice sounded different. Worried, almost desperate. "Kelly, honey, we need to talk," she said. "Your father isn't doing well. His back is acting up again, and he can't take those extra shifts at work anymore." I listened as she listed all their struggles: the leaking roof, the old plumbing, the walls that needed repainting. Every problem came with a price. "We're barely getting by," she said, her voice shaking. "And after all we did for you, the college money, giving you a chance at a better life, now it's time for you to help your family, Kelly." There it was, the reminder of my debt to them. The promise I had made all those years ago. With every word she spoke, my dream of buying my own apartment felt further and further away. After that call, I spent several nights lying awake, thinking.
Guilt weighed on me.
Here I was, planning to buy my own place while my parents couldn't even afford to fix their roof. Finally, I made a decision. One that would change everything. I called Mom back on a Friday morning. "I've been thinking about what you said," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "I want to help. I'm going to give you access to my account. You can use up to $2,000 a month. That should cover repairs and help with bills." There was a long silence. For a moment, I thought we had lost connection. Then Mom finally spoke, her voice filled with emotion. "Kelly, that's so generous. It's such a big amount. We probably won't even need that much, just enough for basic repairs and some groceries." I helped her set up the access on her phone. "Just remember the limit," I reminded her. $2,000 a month. Of course, she assured me. "We'll be very careful with it." At first, everything went smoothly. I was busy with work and didn't check my account often. When I did take a quick look, everything seemed fine. The withdrawals were small, $750 here, $850 there, mostly from hardware stores, grocery shops, and utility payments. It looked like Mom was using the money responsibly, just as she had promised. But then, things started to change. The amount slowly increased, $950 one month, $1,200 the next. I told myself not to worry. After all, they were still under the limit and home repairs could be expensive. Then came the notification that changed everything. I was in a meeting when my phone buzzed. It was an alert I had set up for large purchases. One charge at Luxe Boutique. I nearly dropped my phone. That couldn't be right. As soon as the meeting ended, I pulled up my account details. There it was, clear as day, a $2,500 purchase at one of the most expensive clothing stores in their area. I stared at the screen in disbelief. I had never even shopped there myself. With my goal of saving for an apartment, I couldn't imagine spending that much on clothes. My hands were shaking as I dialed Mom's number. "Mom, I just got a notification about a $2,500 purchase at Luxe Boutique," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "What's going on?" There was a pause, then a nervous laugh.
"Oh, that?"
"Well, you know my birthday is next month," she said, her voice overly cheerful. I saw this absolutely gorgeous dress, and I thought, well, I've been feeling so down lately with all our troubles. I just wanted to treat myself a little. I took a deep breath. "Okay," I said, trying to avoid an argument. "Just please stick to the limit we agreed on." "Of course, honey," she said quickly. Then, as if nothing had happened, she added, By the way, I'm still looking forward to my birthday present from you. You haven't forgotten, have you? I hung up and stared at my screen. Something didn't feel right. This wasn't just about a dress. It was about something bigger, something I wasn't seeing yet. From that moment, I started checking my account more often. I set up detailed alerts, so I could see every transaction. What I found made my stomach turn. Mom had completely ignored the $2,000 limit like it didn't even exist. One month, she spent $2,500. Then $3,000. Before I knew it, some months were hitting $4,500. My savings, the money I had worked so hard for, the money meant for my own home, was disappearing. One evening, after seeing yet another large withdrawal, I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. I opened my laptop and pulled up my account. Then, I created a spreadsheet. The numbers didn't lie. In just a few months, my parents had spent more than I had in an entire year. My own monthly expenses were simple: rent, utilities, groceries, and an occasional dinner with coworkers. I drove a used car, bought clothes on sale, and packed my lunch most days. Meanwhile, my parents were supposedly spending thousands. But on what?
I needed to see for myself.
I picked up my phone and called Mom. Mom, I'm thinking of coming home next weekend, I said casually. It'll be nice to celebrate your birthday in person. And I'd love to see that dress you bought. Plus, you can show me all the repairs you've done on the house. Silence. Then, Mom spoke, but her voice sounded different, sharper, almost nervous. Oh no, honey, don't come. She said it too quickly. I'm not really celebrating my birthday this year. I'm not feeling up to it. I frowned. But Mom, I haven't been home in months. I really want to.
No.
She cut me off. Then, just as quickly, her voice softened. It's just not a good time, Kelly. But you can mail my birthday gift if you'd like. That call set off every alarm in my head. That night, I stayed up late, going through 7 months of bank statements, line by line. The more I looked, the less sense it made. There were charges from stores I knew Mom would never shop at. Restaurants that stayed open until 3 a.m. bars I had never heard of. The so-called home repairs were there, but they were tiny in comparison. $200 at Home Depot, $250 at a plumbing supply store. Meanwhile, thousands had been spent at expensive boutiques, jewelry stores, and electronic shops. Someone had even bought a $1,300 smartphone last month. That made no sense. Mom still used the same old flip phone, always saying she didn't need anything fancy. Then, the pattern became clear, like a blurry picture coming into focus. Teenage bars, nightclubs, designer clothing stores, makeup shops, nail salons. These weren't the expenses of struggling parents barely making ends meet. These were the expenses of someone else. Someone young. Someone who liked to party. Someone with expensive taste. Someone without a job.
Emma.
The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. All those times Mom had talked about the leaking roof and the broken plumbing. All those guilt trips about helping the family. It had all been a cover. My parents weren't using my money to fix their home. They were using it to fund Emma's extravagant lifestyle. I felt sick. I scrolled through transaction after transaction. A $350 spa day. A $550 shopping spree at a designer outlet. $250 bar tabs, multiple times a week. This was why Mom didn't want me to visit. There were no major repairs to see. No home improvements to show off. Just Emma, living the high life on my money, while I struggled, saved, and put off my own dreams. The next morning, I paced around my apartment, rehearsing what I would say. My phone felt heavy in my hand. Finally, around noon, I made the call. Mom, I said as soon as she answered, my voice steadier than I felt. We need to talk about where my money is really going. Silence. Then, finally, what do you mean, honey? I took a deep breath. I think you know exactly what I mean. The bars. The designer clothes. The new smartphone. Those aren't your expenses, are they? They're Emma's. I heard her inhale sharply. Then, she let out a long sigh. When she spoke again, her voice was different. No more sweet talk, no more pretending. Well, What did you expect? She said defensively. We're family. Emma needs nice things too. It's not her fault she hasn't found her path yet. Mom, you lied to me, I said, my hands gripping the phone. You told me the money was for house repairs. We did use some of it for repairs, she shot back. But Kelly, you have so much, and Emma has so little. Besides, you owe us. Or have you forgotten who paid for your fancy college education? I almost laughed. I had been expecting this, the ultimate guilt trip. But this time I was ready. Actually, Mom, I ran the numbers last night. Every single expense for the past 3 years. I pulled up my spreadsheet. In the past 30 months, you've spent $75,000 of my money. That's more than what you and Dad paid for my college tuition, plus interest. So no, I don't owe you anything anymore. Silence. Then, without another word, Mom hung up. I sat there, my heart pounding. Almost on autopilot, I opened YouTube and typed Emma's name into the search bar. I hadn't checked her profile in months. I'd been too busy working, too focused on my own life. Now, as I scrolled, my anger grew with every swipe. There she was, posing in the $2,500 dress from Luxe Boutique, the one Mom had claimed was for her birthday. There she was at a resort last month, lounging by a pool with a cocktail in hand. Parties, clubs, restaurants. One after another, I recognized places from my own bank statements. She was even wearing the expensive jewelry I unknowingly paid for. I needed more information. So, I called Aunt Laura, the one person in the family who always told the truth. The only one who never bought into the Emma can do no wrong story. Aunt Laura? I said, my voice shaking. I need to know the truth. I need to ask you something, I said. Have you been to my parents' house lately? Have they done any repairs? Aunt Laura let out a bitter laugh. Repairs? The only thing that's changed is that the house is falling apart. Your father won't even fix the broken step on the front porch. My heart sank. Why do you ask? She added. I took a deep breath and told her everything. The money I had been sending, the so-called home repairs. With each word, Aunt Laura's sighs grew heavier. Oh, Kelly, she said finally, that money isn't going to repairs. Emma doesn't work. She doesn't even look for a job anymore. She just parties all the time. She hesitated. Then, her voice turned serious. And now she's trying to drag my Jessica into that lifestyle, too. Keeps inviting her to these wild parties, telling her how fun it is to live free and easy. My stomach was already in knots. But what she said next made my blood run cold. There's something else you need to know, Aunt Laura continued, her voice dropping. Jessica told me this in confidence, but you have to hear it. Emma's been showing people a letter of recommendation, supposedly from you. She says she interned at your company under your supervision. I froze. What? Jessica saw it. It has your signature and everything. Emma is planning to use it to apply at Connolly Partners. The room started spinning. A forged letter of recommendation. With my signature. If Emma got caught, and she would get caught, it wouldn't just be her in trouble. It would be me. My company. Everything I had worked for could be ruined. I ended the call with Aunt Laura and immediately dialed Connolly Partners' HR department. My hands were shaking as I explained. I need to report a fraudulent letter of recommendation, I said. My sister is applying for a position using a forged letter in my name. I never wrote it, never signed it, and she has never worked at my company. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 3 days later, my phone exploded with calls from my parents. When I finally answered, Mom's screaming voice nearly burst my eardrum. How dare you sabotage your sister's career, she shrieked. She was about to get that job at Connolly Partners. Mom, she forged my signature? I shot back. She was finally trying to make something of herself. Mom continued, acting like none of that mattered. I hadn't even spoken, and you ruined it. You've always been jealous of her. I heard shuffling, then Dad's voice came on the line. He sounded angrier than I'd ever heard him. Emma has been crying for 3 days straight because of you, he growled. Is that what you wanted? To hurt your sister? Well, congratulations. You're no daughter of mine. Consider yourself disowned. I gripped the phone tighter. Dad, she committed fraud. He cut me off, his voice cold and sharp. If you ever want us to forgive you, you'll need to start sending us more money. A lot more than before. Maybe then, someday, we might consider forgiving you for what you've done to your sister. That was the last straw. Years of guilt, manipulation, and unfair treatment crashed over me. And suddenly, everything became crystal clear. No, I said firmly. I don't owe you anything anymore. I helped you out of love, and you lied to me. If you need money so badly, why don't you ask Emma? She's the one you've been spending it all on anyway. Before they could respond, I hung up. My hands were shaking as I opened my banking app. Without hesitation, I revoked my mother's access to my account, permanently. As I pressed the confirmation button, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. And at the same time, a new one settle in my stomach. I knew what was coming. The calls started the next morning. How could you do this to us? Mom's voice screeched through my voicemail. After everything we've done for you, you selfish. I deleted the message. Emma's voice came next. You think you're so much better than everyone else with your fancy job and your perfect life. I didn't listen to the rest. I deleted that one too. But the messages kept coming, day after day. Texts, voicemails, emails, all filled with insults, guilt trips, and demands to give them back access to my money. Each one angrier and more desperate than the last. I blocked their numbers. Then they started calling from different phones. I blocked those too. A week into the madness, Aunt Laura called. Kelly, honey, she said gently. I just wanted to warn you. Your parents are calling everyone in the family, telling them what a terrible daughter you are. How you abandoned them in their time of need. She sighed. I know the truth, and so does Jessica. We've tried telling them they're wrong, but they won't listen. I just wanted you to know what they're doing. That was 4 months ago. Now, my life has settled into a new normal. My savings account is growing again. It's amazing how fast money adds up when no one is draining it from you. I've started seriously looking at apartments, going to viewings on weekends. Last week, I even met with a mortgage advisor. The calls have mostly stopped. Though I still get the occasional message from a new number, I don't bother reading them anymore. I just delete them. Sometimes I wonder about my parents. Is Dad's back really getting worse? Is Mom still covering for Emma's reckless spending? Did Emma ever try forging someone else's signature? Or is she still living the high life off someone else's money? But mostly, I focus on my own life. I work. I save. I spend time with friends who value me for who I am, not for what I can give them. I'm learning to let go of guilt and to put myself first. Will I ever speak to my family again? I honestly don't know. Maybe someday things will change. Maybe one day, they'll understand what they did wrong. Or maybe, I'll find it in my heart to forgive them, even if they never apologize. But for now, I'm focused on building the life I want, one that isn't weighed down by guilt, obligation, or other people's expectations. Growing up, I always knew I was not the first choice. My name is Patricia, and for as long as I can remember, I watched my parents give all their attention and support to my older brother, Ryan. I was always in the background. It wasn't something small, it was obvious. I remember sitting alone at the kitchen table, doing my homework, while Mom and Dad took Ryan to his singing competitions or club meetings. He was 4 years older than me, and somehow that meant he deserved everything more. Anytime his teachers said he had talent, my parents made sure to invest in it. Even though we didn't have much money, they still paid for lessons and equipment. Ryan has such a beautiful voice. Mom would tell everyone, he's going to be special one day. Meanwhile, I learned not to ask for much. When I wanted to take art classes, Mom just gave me a small smile and said, maybe next semester, honey. Ryan's voice lessons are taking up the budget right now. It became even clearer when Ryan was in his last year of high school. I was 16, sitting at the dinner table quietly when my parents made a big announcement. We've been saving up, Dad said proudly. We're sending Ryan to Burnley College. It's one of the top schools in the state. Ryan's face lit up. Really? That's amazing. And that's not all, Mom added. You can stay in our apartment near campus, no rent of course. We want you to focus on your studies. I stared at my plate, pushing my food around, trying not to show how I felt. But no one was looking at me anyway. They were all focused on Ryan, smiling and talking about his future. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I did the math. If my parents were paying so much for Ryan's college and giving him a free apartment, there was no way they had anything left for me. The thought hit me hard. But instead of feeling bad, I decided to make a plan. The next day, I went to my grandparents' antique shop. I told my grandfather everything. He listened carefully, then said, "Well, Patricia, I could just give you the money for college." He paused, stroking his chin. "But I think it would be better if you earned it yourself. How would you like to work here after school?" And that's how it started. While Ryan packed for his big college journey, I started working at the antique shop every afternoon. I helped sort items, assist customers, and learn the business from my grandfather. My grandmother would bring me snacks and tell me stories about the vintage pieces we sold. My parents' reaction to my new job said a lot. When I told them I was saving for college, they didn't offer help or encouragement. Instead, they just seemed relieved that I had figured things out on my own. For years went by quickly. Every afternoon spent dusting furniture and organizing old jewelry paid off. I had saved enough for college. When I graduated high school, there was no big celebration, just a quiet dinner at home. But I didn't mind. I was proud of myself. I enrolled in a local state college and chose a business program that wouldn't cost too much. The tuition was affordable, and I even had some money left over. Living at home and taking the bus to campus wasn't exciting, but it made sense financially. One evening, I brought up an idea. "Mom, Dad, I've been thinking about getting a used car. It would make getting to class easier." Dad barely looked up from his phone. "Sorry, Patricia. We just don't have the money for that right now." Mom added, "The bus is fine. Lots of students use it." I bit my tongue. I remembered how they had helped Ryan get his license and even gave him money for his first car. But that was in the past. It didn't matter now. My first year of college passed quickly. Just as I was finishing my spring finals, our house was suddenly filled with excitement. Ryan was graduating from Burnley College. Mom and Dad planned a huge celebration, inviting what felt like half the town. The house was packed with relatives, friends, and neighbors, all there to celebrate Ryan. I was in the kitchen arranging snacks when he walked in, making a grand entrance with a pretty blonde woman by his side, Jennifer, his college girlfriend. They were smiling as they held hands and walked into the room. "Everyone," Ryan announced, grabbing everyone's attention. "Jennifer and I have some exciting news. We're engaged." The room exploded with cheers and congratulations. Mom burst into happy tears, and Dad clapped Ryan on the back so hard I thought he might fall over. "But wait, there's more," Jennifer added sweetly. "After the wedding, we're moving to Massachusetts. My parents own a successful business there, and they want us to take it over." Mom cried even harder. "My baby boy, a businessman. That's my son." Dad beamed with pride. "I always knew you'd do great things." I stood quietly in the corner, watching everything. Nobody noticed that I had just finished my first year of college with perfect grades, or that I was working part-time while keeping up with my studies. But I was used to it. For the next year, my parents were completely focused on the wedding. Meanwhile, I stayed busy with school. By the time I was in my fourth year, they had taken out a big loan to pay for everything: the venue, the food, the flowers, the music. Nothing was too expensive for Ryan and Jennifer. The wedding was just what I expected: fancy, emotional, and all about Ryan. I stood there in my bridesmaid dress, which I had to buy with my own money, watching my parents glow with pride as they danced with the happy couple. I knew they would be paying off that wedding loan for years. After the wedding, Ryan and Jennifer left for Massachusetts, and I went back to my small bedroom at my parents' house. As I stare at my textbooks, an idea came to me. The apartment Ryan had lived in during college was now empty. It was close to campus and would give me some space of my own. That evening, while my parents were watching TV, I spoke up. "Mom, Dad, since Ryan's apartment is empty now, would it be okay if I moved in?" They looked at each other before Mom answered. "Well, honey, you can move in. but you'll have to pay rent. The words hit me like a slap. Rent? But Ryan lived there for free. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. That was different. We have the wedding loan to pay off now. We need the extra money. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm your daughter too, I said, my voice shaking a little. I've never asked you for anything. I worked for my own college money. I take the bus everywhere. Mom raised her hand to stop me. She and Dad shared one of those silent looks, the kind they used when deciding whether to spend money on Ryan's activities. Fine, Mom finally said. We'll charge you half the normal rent. I wanted to argue, but I knew this was the best deal I would get. Okay, I'll take it. That weekend, I moved into the apartment. Ryan's presence was still everywhere, small holes in the walls from his posters, water rings on the coffee table from his late-night study sessions. I took extra shifts at the cafe to cover rent, often working until closing. Between classes, studying, and work, I barely had time to sleep. My final year of college passed in a blur of textbooks, cafe aprons, and midnight study sessions. Before I knew it, graduation day arrived. While my classmates' families planned big celebrations, my parents kept it simple, just a quiet dinner at home. They only invited my grandparents. No big party, no extra guests, no fancy catering like Ryan's graduation. We sat around the dining table, eating the lasagna I had made myself. Grandma reached over and squeezed my hand. Patricia, dear, we're so proud of you, she said warmly. Graduating with top honors while working part-time, that's an incredible achievement. Before I could reply, Mom's phone buzzed. Her face lit up as she read the message. Oh, speaking of achievements, she said, cutting in. Ryan just texted. The business is doing great. They're expanding to 2 new locations. I sat there, watching as my graduation dinner turned into a celebration of Ryan's success in Massachusetts. My grandparents exchanged knowing looks, and Grandpa patted my shoulder in quiet support. But my hard work in college paid off sooner than I expected. Just 3 weeks after graduation, I got a job at Scott & Larry, one of the most respected firms in the city. The salary was even better than I had hoped, and I was excited to start my career. That excitement lasted exactly 4 days, until my parents found out about my salary. Mom showed up at my apartment unannounced. Patricia, she said, sitting down like it was just another visit. Now that you're making good money, you should start paying full rent. I stared at her, unsure if I had heard correctly. But we agreed on half. That was when you were a student, she replied like it was obvious. You can afford it now. I wanted to remind her that Ryan had lived here for free even after he got a job. But I had learned that comparing myself to him was useless. The apartment was in the perfect location, just a 15-minute walk from my office, so I reluctantly agreed. Life settled into a routine. I focused on my job, determined to prove myself at the company. Every month, like clockwork, Mom would call. Patricia, dear, just reminding you about the rent. It's due on Sunday. We're counting on that money. For years passed this way. I worked hard and eventually got a big promotion and a raise. But I didn't tell anyone. I had learned my lesson. Any sign of financial success would only bring more demands from my parents. Through occasional updates, I heard that Ryan and Jennifer had a baby boy. I had seen pictures on social media, but I hadn't visited. Our conversations had become nothing more than short birthday messages and holiday greetings, and I was fine with that. Then came the phone call that changed everything. Patricia, Mom's voice was tense. We need to talk about your brother. There's been some trouble. I closed my eyes, already knowing where this was going. The business, it went bankrupt, she continued. He had a huge fight with Jennifer's parents. They're furious about how he managed things, and they're not speaking to him anymore. I took a deep breath. Oh, I said carefully. I assume he'll be staying with you and Dad? Mom hesitated. Actually, that apartment you're in is quite big. He'll be staying there. The phone almost slipped from my hand.
What?
Mom, this is my home. I've been living here for years. Don't be dramatic, Patricia. Your brother needs help. He doesn't have any money right now, so he'll stay there for free. You can keep paying the rent. That's ridiculous, I protested. If he's moving in, Maybe I should just find my own place.
Don't you dare, Mom snapped.
We need your rent money now more than ever. Ryan's going through a rough time. You wouldn't want to make things harder for him, would you? I shook my head in disbelief and hung up without another word. Moving day was worse than I had imagined. Ryan, Jennifer, and their crying baby, Eric, arrived with piles of luggage and baby gear. Mom showed up to supervise, which really meant making my life as difficult as possible. Patricia, clear out your room, Mom ordered, hands on her hips. Ryan and Jennifer need it for Eric's nursery. I stood frozen in the doorway of my bedroom, the only space I'd called my own for the past 5 years.
What?
Where am I supposed to sleep? The living room has a perfectly good couch, she said, already moving my things. You can't be serious. I pay rent here, full rent, and you're making me sleep on the couch. Mom's expression hardened. Don't be selfish, Patricia. Your brother has a baby. Babies need proper rooms. I watched helplessly as my bedroom was turned into a nursery, complete with a crib, a changing table, and all the other baby stuff. My belongings were dumped in a corner of the living room, which was now my bedroom. The next few weeks were a complete nightmare. Ryan spent his days moping around the apartment, either complaining about his in-laws or talking about his glory days as a successful businessman. Jennifer was either crying or arguing with Ryan about whose turn it was to change Eric's diaper. The baby, sensing the tension, cried nonstop. Every day, I came home from work exhausted, only to find dirty dishes piled in the sink, toys scattered everywhere, and laundry overflowing. At first, I tried to ignore it, but soon, the dishes attracted ants, and the mess made it impossible to relax in my so-called bedroom. So I cleaned. I cooked. I did laundry. But every time I made food, it mysteriously disappeared before I could even eat. One evening, after an especially frustrating day at work, I decided to offer Ryan a chance to get back on his feet. Ryan, I said, trying to keep my voice calm, my company has a few job openings. I could talk to HR for you. The benefits are great, and the starting pay is decent. Ryan barely looked up from his phone. His face twisted in disgust. An entry-level job? Are you serious? I'm a businessman, Patricia. I don't do entry-level. I need an executive position, something that fits my experience. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Your experience running a business into the ground? Ryan's face darkened. You don't know anything about what happened. That was my in-laws' fault. They set me up to fail. He stormed off to my old bedroom, while I stood there, wondering how much longer I could live like this. 4 months into this miserable living situation, I sat at the kitchen table, now covered in Eric's dried baby food and Jennifer's coffee rings, going through my bank statements. The numbers didn't lie. My expenses had nearly doubled since Ryan and his family moved in. That was the final push I needed. I picked up my phone and called my parents, determined to stay calm and reasonable. The conversation went just as badly as I expected. Mom, Dad, we need to talk about the living situation, I began. Ryan and Jennifer aren't paying for anything. They're eating all my food, using the utilities I pay for, and... Patricia, Mom cut me off, her voice sharp. I can't believe how selfish you're being. Your brother lost everything. His in-laws betrayed him. He has a baby to take care of. Dad's voice came from the background. You should be grateful that you're in a position to help family. But that's just it, I said, trying to stay calm. I'm not just helping. I'm carrying everything. I pay all the bills. They don't even buy groceries. That's enough, Mom snapped. Your brother is going through a hard time. This won't last forever. You need to be more understanding. That night, I opened my laptop and started looking for apartments. I saved a few options that were close to my office. Just in case, I told myself. Just in case things got worse. Things got worse exactly 3 weeks later. I was sitting on my couch bed, trying to focus on work documents while Eric wailed in the background. Ryan and Jennifer were having their 4th argument of the day. Then the doorbell rang. Before anyone could answer, my parents walked in. Mom had that look, The same one she had whenever she was about to announce that Ryan had been signed up for another expensive program. Dad stood behind her, avoiding eye contact. "Patricia, we need to talk about the rent," Mom said. I looked up from my laptop. "I paid this month's rent. On time as always." "Yes, but starting next month, we're doubling it." The room went silent. Even Eric stopped crying. I stared at my mother, sure I had misheard. "Double? But I'm already paying full rent." Mom gestured around the apartment. "Well, there are more people living here now. That means more wear and tear, more utilities being used. It's only fair that the rent reflects that." "Fair?" I let out a bitter laugh. "How is it fair that I should pay double rent when I don't even have a bedroom? I sleep on the couch. If anyone should pay more, it should be Ryan. He's the one who—" "I'm not paying anything." Ryan jumped up from his chair. "This is ridiculous. I lost everything, and now you expect me to pay rent." "Of course not, sweetie," Mom said gently, before turning back to me with a cold look. "Patricia, you have a good job. You can afford this. Your brother needs time to get back on his feet." I looked at their faces, Mom's firm expectation, Dad's awkward silence, Ryan's outrage, and Jennifer's smug expression. 4 months of frustration boiled inside me, but I swallowed it down. I nodded. "Fine." I spoke softly. "Double rent, starting next month." Mom's face lit up with satisfaction. She and Dad left soon after, clearly happy that everything had gone smoothly. They had no idea they had just given me the final push I needed to make my decision. Later that night, I lay on my uncomfortable couch bed, trying to read. That's when I heard Ryan and Jennifer talking in the kitchen. They were whispering, but their excitement made them careless. "Can you believe it?" Jennifer giggled. "Your mom just told me they're giving us half of Patricia's rent money every month." Ryan's smug reply made my blood boil. "Of course they are. They know we need help right now. Patricia makes plenty of money. She can support us for a while." "This is perfect," Jennifer continued. "We get to live here for free and even have extra spending money. Your sister doesn't need to know." I gripped my book so tightly my knuckles turned white. All this time, I thought my parents were just being unfair. But this wasn't just favoritism. This was a plan. They weren't just helping Ryan. They were using me to pay for his laziness. I grabbed my laptop and pulled up the apartment listings I had saved. One caught my eye, a modern 2-bedroom in a quiet building, even closer to my office than my current place. The rent was exactly what I had been paying before the increase. I called the number immediately, keeping my voice low. "Hi, I'm interested in the apartment on Cedar Street." "Yes, I can come see it right now." "Perfect. I'll be there in 20 minutes." The apartment was everything I wanted: clean, quiet, and Ryan-free. I signed the lease on the spot and paid the deposit using my emergency savings. Back at the apartment, I waited until everyone was asleep before quietly packing my essentials into 2 large suitcases. I left the furniture behind. It wasn't worth the trouble. I could buy new things, ones that didn't remind me of this mess. The next morning, I rolled my suitcases to the door. Ryan was at the kitchen table, scrolling through job listings he had no intention of applying for. "Going somewhere?" he asked, barely looking up. "Month-long business trip." I lied smoothly. "Big project in our Columbus office." He just grunted, already losing interest. That evening, I moved into my new apartment. I ordered takeout and sat on the floor of my empty living room, enjoying the silence. No crying baby. No arguing couple. No guilt-tripping parents. Just peace. For the next month, I lived quietly in my new home. I bought a comfortable bed. A real couch, not one I had to sleep on. Kitchen supplies that only I would use. I cooked meals that stayed in my fridge until I ate them. I slept through the night without being woken up by Eric's crying. Then, right on time, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Patricia," she snapped, skipping any greeting. "Why haven't you sent the full rent payment? We agreed on double, remember?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Actually, Mom, I know all about your little deal with Ryan and Jennifer. Were you ever going to tell me that half my rent was going straight to them?" "That's none of your business. Your brother needs—" "No, Mom." I cut her off, still chuckling. What my brother needs is to grow up and take responsibility for once in his life. I've moved out. Found my own place. The apartment is yours and Ryan's now. You what? She screeched. You can't do this. We need that rent money. Well, I said, smiling to myself, I'm sure Ryan will step up and start paying rent now that he's had time to get back on his feet. Can't wait to see how that works out for you. Silence. I could hear the gears turning in her head as reality hit her. Their easy source of money was gone. All they had left was their unemployed son, who had never paid a single bill in his life. Patricia, sweetie, Mom's voice suddenly turned soft and sweet, the way it always did when she wanted something. Let's not be hasty. We can work something out. What if we go back to the original rent amount? That was fair, wasn't it? I leaned back into my new couch, the one I picked myself for my apartment, where no one could ever kick me out of my own bedroom.
No, Mom.
That's not going to happen. But Patricia, we're family. You can't just… Family? I interrupted. Is that what you call it when you secretly give my money to Ryan? When you kick me out of my room while I'm paying all the bills? When you've treated me like an ATM my whole life while treating Ryan like a king? That's not fair. We've always… Goodbye, Mom. I ended the call and blocked their numbers. That was 7 months ago. I never asked for updates, but my grandparents tell me anyway. They know I need to hear it. I need to know I made the right choice. According to my grandparents, Ryan, Jennifer, and Eric are still living in the apartment. They haven't paid a single month's rent. Mom and Dad are covering all the utilities and even giving them extra money because the baby needs things. Ryan still hasn't found a job. Apparently, there aren't many executive positions for failed businessmen with a history of bankruptcy. Meanwhile, my life is peaceful. I got another promotion at work, bought myself a car, and started taking evening classes for my MBA. My apartment is always clean. My food stays in the fridge until I decide to eat it. And every night, I sleep in my own bed. The other day, I ran into Jennifer's cousin at the grocery store. She casually mentioned that Jennifer and Ryan are expecting another baby. I just smiled and wished her well, knowing that somewhere across town my parents are probably already figuring out how to pay for another nursery. But that's not my problem anymore. For the first time in my life, I'm putting myself first.
And it feels absolutely right.
When people ask me about my childhood, I usually change the subject. It's not that it was terrible. I always had food to eat and a place to live. But let's just say it wasn't a happy, perfect family like on TV. My name is Janet, and now that I'm 33, I'm finally ready to share my story. Not because I want people to feel sorry for me, but because maybe someone out there needs to hear it. I was 7 years old when everything changed. That's when my little sister, Lauren, was born 3 months early. I still remember my dad rushing to the hospital in the middle of the night while my Aunt Kelly came over to take care of me. Everyone was so worried about the baby, and honestly, so was I. I didn't know much about premature babies back then, but from the way the adults looked, I knew something was wrong. Lauren survived, but she was very weak. Our home became a mix of a hospital and a germ-free zone. My mom was always cleaning, and the smell of disinfectant became as familiar as the smell of dinner. Every surface in the house sparkled, and if I even sniffled, my mom's eyes would narrow with worry. Not for me, but for Lauren. Janet, was that a cough? She would ask. We can't take any chances, she'd say. Pack your bag. You're going to Grandma's for a few days. And just like that, I'd be sent away, either to Grandma's house or to Aunt Kelly's, like I was carrying some kind of disease. It happened so often that I started keeping a packed bag in my closet, ready to go. At first, I tried to think of these trips as little vacations. But after a while, it just felt like I was being pushed out of my own home. So I threw myself into school. I wanted to make my parents proud, to get their attention in a different way. I got straight A's, joined the debate team, and even won a regional science fair. But no matter what I did, it never seemed to matter. My achievements were always ignored, lost behind Lauren's latest doctor's visit or small improvement. Look, Mom, I got first place in the science fair. I would hold up my trophy and say, look, Mom, I won. But instead of being happy, she would just say, that's nice, honey. Did you wash your hands? Lauren's been feeling a little sick today. The worst part? When Lauren turned 7, she suddenly stopped getting sick. It was like someone flipped a switch, and she became a perfectly healthy kid. But nothing changed with Mom and Dad. They had spent so many years protecting her that they didn't know how to stop. And Lauren? She quickly learned that acting weak could get her anything she wanted. High school was supposed to be my time to shine. I was doing everything right, good grades, clubs, everything. But in our house, Lauren's problems always came first. I remember one parents' night very clearly. My chemistry teacher was telling my parents about my chances of getting a science scholarship. Janet is one of our brightest students, Mr. David said, smiling. She has a real future in. Before he could finish, my mom's phone rang. Lauren was having a crisis at home with the babysitter. What's wrong, sweetie? Mom asked, already grabbing her things. Through the phone, I could hear Lauren fake crying. I can't find my favorite pen for homework. The one Janet gave me is stupid. And just like that, parents' night was over. They rushed home to comfort Lauren over a pen. A pen. I stood there watching them leave while Mr. David awkwardly patted my shoulder. After that night, they stopped coming to my events completely. It's just easier this way, they said. No more interruptions from Lauren's tantrums. When I won the state debate championship, they didn't even put my trophy on the shelf. Lauren gets anxious when she sees other people's achievements, Mom explained as she tucked my trophy into a drawer. The day I got accepted into college should have been a huge deal. I had a full scholarship, tuition, books, everything covered. I was so excited. But when I told my family at dinner, Lauren just rolled her eyes.
Whatever, she said.
Now you can finally move out, and I can turn your room into my gaming paradise. I'm thinking 2 monitors. Maybe a streaming setup. That night, I started counting down the days until I could leave for college. The next 5 years flew by. I spent as much time as possible in my dorm or the library. Home was just a place I visited for required family dinners, where Lauren always stole the spotlight with stories about her latest middle school drama. By the time I was 24, I had my degree and landed a job as a manager at Timothy & Company. The pay wasn't great, it was just enough to rent a tiny apartment and buy cheap grocery store sushi. But I didn't care. Just having my own space felt like winning the lottery. One day, while scrolling through social media during my lunch break, I saw an ad for an investment course. Learn to make your money work for you. Usually, I would scroll past things like that, but something made me stop. The course wasn't cheap, but I could afford it if I lived on ramen noodles for a month. That course changed everything. The instructor, Kenneth, had a way of making complicated investment ideas seem simple. I started small, putting a few $100s into promising tech stocks. Then I added a little more. I studied market trends like my life depended on it. I took advanced courses from top investors and learned about risk management and how to build a strong investment portfolio. My first big win came from a small AI company that no one was paying attention to. I put in $1,000, and in just 4 months, it turned into $10,000. Then I invested in a biotech startup, and my money tripled. Before I knew it, my side business was making more than my actual job. I'll never forget the morning I realized I could quit. I was at my desk, pretending to care about boring reports when my investment app pinged. Another stock had reached my target price. I did the math. My investment income was now 4 times my salary. Right then and there, I typed up my resignation letter. Even after quitting, I kept going to those Sunday family dinners.
I don't know why.
Maybe it was just habit. Maybe a small part of me still hoped things would change. I would sit there, pushing Mom's overcooked chicken around my plate, listening to them talk about Lauren while my investment app kept pinging in my pocket. Janet, you're still at Timothy's, right? Mom would ask sometimes, not really waiting for an answer. Yep, same job, I'd say, watching their attention drift away before I even finished speaking.
It was easier that way.
No need to explain that I had quit 3 years ago. No need to mention that I now made more money in a single day than I used to make in a month. Lauren was the star of every dinner. She had gotten into Western University, one of those fancy schools where tuition costs more than a house. It's so expensive, Mom would say, sighing, but her voice was full of pride. But Lauren deserves the best education. We've taken out loans, of course, but it's worth it for our little girl's future. Lauren would smile, twirling her pasta. My roommate has a Gucci backpack. Everyone at school comes from such good families. The message was clear. Unlike our family, Janet. Unlike you. Then one Sunday, I walked in to find Mom crying over bills. Dad was at the kitchen table, surrounded by stacks of paperwork, his reading glasses slipping down his nose. The property taxes went up again, he muttered. And with Lauren's tuition, I watched them struggle and thought about all the times they had chosen Lauren over me. And yet, they were still my parents. That night, I set up an automatic transfer, $22,000 a month, to my parents' account. When I told them, Mom actually hugged me. It was the first time in years she had shown me any real affection. "Oh, Janet, this will help so much," she said. For a moment, I thought maybe things would change. Maybe they would finally see me differently. But later that night, I overheard them talking in the kitchen after dinner. "We should send some of Janet's money to Lauren," Mom was saying. "At least $600. The poor thing feels so out of place among all those rich students." "Good idea," Dad agreed. "She needs to keep up appearances. Maybe she can finally buy that designer bag she's been wanting." I stood there, frozen, shaking my head. They weren't even grateful. They were already planning how to use my money to help Lauren fit in with her rich classmates. For a second, I wanted to walk in and tell them everything, that I had quit my job years ago, that I had built an investment portfolio worth more than they could imagine, that I could buy an entire designer store if I wanted to. But I didn't. I just stood there, listening, realizing that no matter what I did, I would always come second. By the time I turned 30, I was ready for a change. My investments had grown beyond anything I had ever imagined, and I was tired of wasting money on rent. After months of searching, I found the perfect apartment, a safe building, a great view of the city. Nothing too fancy, just a beautiful space that felt like home. The best part? I could buy it outright. No loans, no mortgage, no debt. The day I got the keys, I stood in the empty living room, listening to my footsteps echo off the hardwood floors. This place was mine, all mine. I had done this on my own, without anyone's help, without anyone's approval. A few days later, Mom called to check in, which really meant she wanted to talk about Lauren. "I'm moving," I mentioned casually. "Did you find a cheaper rental?" she asked, barely paying attention. I could hear her shuffling papers on the other end. "Just a different place," I said. "Better location." "Well, don't spend too much on rent, honey. You know how unstable the job market is for people in your position." I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. If only she knew that my position meant managing millions in investments, not sitting at a desk at Timothy's. At the next family gathering, Aunt Kelly asked about my new place. Before I could answer, Mom spoke up. "Janet's renting a new apartment," she said quickly. Then, without missing a beat, she turned to the real star of the evening. "But wait until you hear about Lauren's latest accomplishments." I sat back and watched the usual scene unfold, relatives excitedly talking about Lauren's bright future while giving me pitying glances. "Lauren's going places," Dad said proudly. "Not that we're surprised. She's always been the real achiever. She already has companies fighting over her. Unlike some people who settle for mediocrity," my cousin whispered to his wife, loud enough for me to hear. I took a sip of my wine and thought about the stock trade I had made that morning, the one that earned me more money than my cousin made in a whole year. But I stayed quiet. Let them think what they wanted. Then came Lauren's graduation party. Mom and Dad went all out, fancy catering, expensive decorations, everything. I noticed they used the money I sent them to help pay for it, but at this point, I was used to that. Lauren walked around in her cap and gown like she had just won the Nobel Prize. When she spotted me standing by the punch bowl, she made a beeline toward me, holding her diploma like it was a trophy. "Look at this, Janet," she said, shoving it in my face. "Western University, not some state school, like you went to. And I already have interviews lined up with top companies. I'm not going to end up pushing papers like you." I took another sip of punch. "Congratulations, Lauren. That's all you have to say? Aren't you jealous? I mean, I'm going to be so successful, and you're just, well, you. She stood there, waiting for me to admit that she was better than me. I could have told her about my investment portfolio, about my fully paid apartment, about how I made more money before my morning coffee than she would in her entire first year of work. But what was the point? Instead, I just shrugged and walked away, leaving her standing there, holding her diploma like a shield against her own insecurities. For months later, Lauren was still unemployed. All those companies that were supposedly fighting over her, turns out they weren't that impressed with her expensive degree after all. Meanwhile, the loan payments started rolling in. One evening, my phone rang. "Janet, do you have a minute to talk?" Mom asked, her voice carefully measured. "It's about Lauren's student loans." She paused, probably for dramatic effect. "They're really crushing us, honey. And with all our other bills, I hate to ask, but could you possibly? How much do you need?" I asked, already knowing I would regret it. "Well, if you could increase your monthly help to $4,000, that would be such a blessing." I thought about all the times they ignored my achievements, all the times Lauren had mocked me. But I also thought about my bank account, comfortable, sitting at 7 figures, something my family knew nothing about. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll set up the new amount starting next month." Mom's "thank you" was barely out of her mouth before she started planning how to spend it. "This will help so much with Lauren's loan payments. And maybe we can buy her some proper interview clothes." A few weeks later, Lauren finally got a job at the same company where Dad had gone to college with the HR director. The irony wasn't lost on me when she ended up with the title of manager. One weekend, I stopped by my parents' house and found Lauren lying on the couch, scrolling through apartment listings on her phone. "Ugh, everything is so expensive," she complained. "I can't believe I have to live here with Mom and Dad. This is so embarrassing." "You could look at smaller apartments," I suggested. "Or maybe something outside the city center?" She looked at me like I had told her to live in a dumpster. "I need to be in the right neighborhood, Janet. Not that you'd understand. Some of us have standards." I glanced around at our parents' simple living room, the same one where she was living for free, but I kept my mouth shut. She tossed her phone aside and sighed. "This is just temporary. Unlike you, I'm not going to be stuck as a manager forever. I have potential." The Thanksgiving plan. As Thanksgiving got closer, Mom went into her usual hosting panic. Every year, she insisted on cooking everything herself, turning the kitchen into a stress-filled disaster zone. But this year was different. "I don't know what I'm going to do," she moaned over the phone a week before the holiday. "I sprained my back pulling Lauren's laundry out of the dryer, and now I can barely stand up straight. How am I supposed to cook for 30 people? Why don't you let me handle it?" I offered. "I can have everything catered from that new restaurant downtown." Mom gasped, clearly relieved. "You're such a good daughter. I don't know what we'd do without you." In the background of our video call, I caught a glimpse of Lauren rolling her eyes dramatically. Mom's praise, even a little, was clearly ruining her day. Thanksgiving dinner. Thanksgiving Day started like any other family gathering. The food arrived right on time, and I helped Mom set everything up while trying to ignore Lauren's constant complaints. "Store-bought stuffing will never taste as good as homemade," she muttered. I had brought my laptop along because the Asian markets were opening during dinner, and I had some investments to check on. I set it up in my old room and left it running while I joined the family. The food was amazing, definitely better than Mom's usual dry turkey. As everyone settled in with their plates, Mom brought up her back injury again. I was so worried about how I'd manage the cooking, she told a whole table of aunts, uncles, and cousins. But Janet stepped in and arranged for all this wonderful catered food. Wasn't that thoughtful? "That's really nice of you, Janet," Aunt Kelly said with a smile. "That must have been expensive." "Oh, it's nothing," I said, trying to change the subject. "I'm just glad everyone's enjoying it." Mom nodded, looking proud. "She's doing well enough at that management job to help us out quite a bit." It was probably the first time in years she had bragged about me. I saw Lauren's face darken. She suddenly pushed her chair back and stormed out of the room. At first, I thought she was just throwing another one of her usual tantrums, but something felt different this time. Moments later, she came back, holding my laptop with a smug smile that made my stomach drop. "Let's see just how well Janet is really doing," she announced loudly, looking around the table. "Since she's so generous, I bet she won't mind if I show everyone her bank account. Time to prove what a loser she really is." My heart pounded. I jumped up from my chair. "Lauren, don't." But it was too late. She spun the laptop around for everyone to see. My banking app was still open from when I had checked it earlier. The room went dead silent. Lauren's face turned pale like she had seen a ghost. Her hand shook so badly, I thought she might drop my laptop. "Lauren," Mom asked, concerned. "What's wrong? What does it say?" Lauren's voice came out barely above a whisper. $8 million. The silence that followed was suffocating. I could hear everything. The ticking of Mom's old kitchen clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the sound of my cousin's fork dropping onto his plate. "There must be some mistake," Aunt Kelly said, leaning in to get a better look. "Janet's a manager at Timothy's." I let out a slow breath. "I haven't worked at Timothy's for years," I said calmly. "I quit to focus on investing full-time. I studied the markets, took courses, learned everything I could, and I got good at it. Really good." Lauren looked at me, her face pale. "You mean you're rich?" Her voice cracked on the last word. I nodded. "I've been investing for years now. Started small, learned as I went. Yes, I have $8 million in that account. And no, I wasn't hiding it. You all just never asked." The silence lasted only 4 seconds before Mom's scream shattered it. $8 million? She jumped up from her chair, her face turning bright red. "You have $8 million, and you've been letting us struggle all this time?" I stared at her, shocked. "Struggle?" I repeated. "I send you $4,000 every month." "You're a millionaire," she shrieked, her voice reaching a pitch I didn't even know was possible. "Your sister has student loans. We have bills. How could you be so selfish? So greedy?" Dad joined in, his face twisted with anger. "We raised you better than this, Janet. To think you've been hoarding money while your own family suffers." Something inside me snapped. Years of being the second choice, the afterthought, the reliable but unimportant daughter, all of it came rushing out. "Hoarding money? Are you serious?" I laughed, but there was no joy in it. "Where's the money you saved for Lauren's college, Mom?" "Oh, wait, you didn't save anything because you spent it all on her endless wants and needs. But funny thing, you didn't pay for my college either, remember? I got a full scholarship while Lauren went to her fancy private university on loans." "That's different." Mom snapped. Lauren needed. Lauren wanted. It's always about Lauren. I was standing now too, my voice shaking with years of frustration. "Well, guess what? My money is mine. I earned every penny of it. $4,000 is nothing to you." Mom yelled. "You should be sending us at least $20,000 a month. We're your parents." I let out a wild laugh. $20,000? You want $20,000 a month? For what? So you can keep spoiling your precious Lauren? I turned to my sister, who was now shrinking back in her seat. "You wanted to prove I was a loser, right? Well, surprise. The sister you've looked down on for years, the one you mocked for being just a manager. Turns out she's the successful one. How does that feel?" The whole table sat frozen, fork still in the air, watching like it was some kind of nightmare tennis match. "Well, if you're so successful," Mom spat, "then you can certainly afford to help your family more. It's your duty." "My duty?" I walked over to Lauren and snatched my laptop from her hands. "My duty ended the day you decided Lauren was the only daughter that mattered. She's the one with all the potential, remember? Well, let her fulfill that potential and help you pay the bills." Aunt Kelly tried to step in. "Maybe we should all just calm down." But there was no calming the storm. Mom and Dad were both shouting now, their voices overlapping in a mess of accusations and demands. Lauren had started crying, her usual trick when things didn't go her way. I didn't say another word. I just turned and walked out of my childhood home, Mom's screaming still echoing behind me as I got into my car. The aftermath. Before I even got home, the messages started. My phone buzzed over and over, calls and texts from Mom, Dad, and Lauren. At first, they were angry demands. Then came the guilt trips. I tried responding at first, hoping maybe they would finally understand. But it was like talking to a wall. They didn't want to understand. They just wanted access to my bank account. Then Mom took it to social media. Her post was a masterpiece of fake heartbreak. Absolutely devastated to learn that my eldest daughter has become a millionaire while watching her own family struggle. She refuses to help her sister with student loans or support her aging parents. Money truly changes people. Please pray for Janet to remember her family values. The comments poured in. Family, friends, people I hadn't heard from in years suddenly had a lot to say about me. How could she be so heartless? I always knew there was something off about her. What kind of person abandons their family like this? Mom liked every single comment, adding crying emojis and replying with "thank you for understanding." The relatives who had been there for the Thanksgiving meltdown stayed quiet. But their silence didn't help much against the flood of family friends calling me everything from ungrateful to evil. That was the last straw. I opened my banking app and stared at the automatic transfer, $4,000 a month. They had called it pocket change. With one click, I canceled it. Then, I sent Mom one final message. I've canceled the monthly transfers. I'm done being your A-team. Don't contact me again. But they didn't take the hint. The calls increased, coming at all hours. Lauren started calling from different numbers when I blocked hers. Dad left long, rambling voicemails about family duty. Mom's social media posts became even worse. I blocked everything, their numbers, emails, and social media accounts. But I knew they wouldn't stop there. The final step. Jeffrey. I called down to my building's concierge. I need to add some names to the do not admit list. I gave him their names, descriptions, and even showed him pictures. He nodded, making careful notes. Sure enough, the very next day, Jeffrey called me. Your parents and sister just tried to force their way in, he said. They caused quite a scene in the lobby, threatened to call the police. I wasn't even surprised. That night, I opened my laptop and started looking at real estate in other states. Maybe it was time for a fresh start. Somewhere far away. Some people might call it running away. I call it setting boundaries. They had years of chances to treat me like family. They chose to ignore my achievements. They chose to mock my success. They chose to put Lauren first every single time. Now, they've shown me exactly how they see me. And I feel no obligation to keep them in my life. As I scroll through listings in cities where they'll never find me, I feel nothing but relief. Sometimes, the healthiest thing you can do is walk away. Even from family. In a tall glass office building in Middletown, Connecticut, standing 40 floors high, Cheryl Miller stood by a large window on the top floor. It was December 25th, at 4 p.m. She quietly watched as the falling snow covered the busy Wallingford, turning it into a peaceful, silver-white world. Her desk was piled with reports about investment performance for the last part of the year. Her office walls were covered with awards. At 37 years old, Cheryl was one of the best senior analysts at the investment bank. Will everything go well tomorrow? She muttered with a sigh, her usual confidence fading for a moment. It had been 16 years since her father passed away. Since then, Cheryl had thrown herself into her work to survive. Her $180,000 salary and carefully saved money showed how hard she had worked. A notification popped up on her phone. It was an Instagram post from her brother, Timothy. He was showing off a brand new Rolex with the caption, "Life is great." Cheryl frowned. Another new watch? Her brother was spending their father's inheritance as if it would never run out. His wife, Madison, was the same, posting pictures of expensive bags and accessories almost every day. Their mother, Betty, and stepfather, John, also lived a life of luxury in an upscale home in Kentucky. The night before, Cheryl had gotten a call from her mother, another request for money. Cheryl, listen. Her mother's voice had a sharp tone. Timothy wants to buy a new car. He needs money for the down payment. All right, I'll send it. Cheryl said, already used to these demands. She had been paying for her parents' extravagant lifestyle and helping her brother financially for years. From her desk drawer, she pulled out a photo. It was from the last Christmas she spent with her father. The picture had been taken in the hospital. Even though he looked weak, he had a warm smile. "Dad, I'm trying my best," Cheryl whispered to the photo before shifting her eyes to a reservation confirmation beside it. She had booked 36 suites at Skytop Gazebo, a luxury resort in the Aspen Gondola, for the Christmas holiday. Each suite cost $1,000 per night, adding up to nearly $15,000. It was a big expense, even for her. But for Cheryl, this trip wasn't just a holiday. It was her last chance to fix things with her family. She was covering all the costs and making time for them, hoping something would change. Her office phone rang. It was Skytop Gazebo calling to confirm final details for the stay starting tomorrow. Cheryl sat up straight, shifting into her usual professional tone. "Yes, this is Cheryl. About tomorrow's plans." As she spoke, she glanced out the window again. The winter afternoon felt heavy with both excitement and worry. In the middle of her room, a Louis Vuitton suitcase lay half-packed. On the bed, a dark green cashmere sweater was neatly folded, the one she planned to wear the next day. It wasn't a $35,000 designer piece, but it was high quality and simple, just like her taste in life. "Is this the right choice?" she murmured, holding the sweater against her chest as she looked in the mirror. Her sister-in-law Madison always wore the latest luxury brands. Her mother had also developed a liking for flashy outfits, matching her stepfather John's extravagant lifestyle. Just then, her phone rang again. It was Mark. "Is everything going as planned?" His voice was warm, but had a hint of concern. "Mostly," Cheryl replied, sounding a little tired. "I've given special instructions to the staff at Skytop Gazebo. If anything happens, they'll let me know right away." Mark was a well-known hotel owner in the U.S., and Skytop Gazebo was one of his luxury resorts. They had met 3 years ago at an investors' conference and had slowly built a strong connection. "Thank you, but everything will be fine," Cheryl said as she walked back to the window. "This time, things will be different. This trip will change something." After the call, she sat down on the sofa in her living room. On the coffee table lay a photo, her last moment with her father. 16 years ago, in a white hospital room, her frail father had gently held her hand and said, "You're strong. You're the only one I can trust to take care of this family." Those words had stayed with her. They had pushed her to study hard, graduate with top grades, and climb her way up in the finance world. Cheryl worked just as hard as her male coworkers and earned the position of senior analyst at an investment bank by her early 30s. Meanwhile, her brother, Timothy, had dropped out of college after their father passed away. With the support of his stepfather, he continued to live off their father's inheritance. After getting married, Timothy and his wife, Madison, maintained a luxurious lifestyle. Cheryl's phone vibrated with a message from Timothy. "You're picking me up tomorrow morning, right? Don't oversleep." Even in text, his usual arrogant tone was clear. Cheryl replied briefly, "Of course." She had mixed feelings about using her own car for the trip. Timothy usually used high-end taxi services and rarely drove himself. Looking at the time, she saw it was already past 11 p.m. She needed to pick up her family early the next morning. With a sigh, she started packing the rest of her luggage. Her heartbeat quickened slightly, maybe from excitement, maybe from nerves. She looked at her father's photo one last time. His warm smile seemed to encourage her. "Tomorrow will go well," she whispered before heading to her bedroom. But even in bed, it was hard to fall asleep, as excitement and worry swirled in her mind. The next morning, Christmas Eve, Middletown was covered in a sparkling layer of fresh snow. The clock showed 7 a.m. Cheryl woke up before her alarm. "Today's the day," she told herself, taking a deep breath as she got out of bed. She had woken up 25 minutes earlier than planned, which was actually a good thing. She wanted to be fully ready before picking up her family. Standing in front of the large bathroom mirror, Cheryl carefully applied her makeup. Around her neck, she wore a single diamond necklace, a keepsake from her father. Her outfit was simple yet elegant, a reflection of who she was. Perfect. She looked at her reflection. The confidence she had built over 37 years and the nervousness about the day ahead mixed together in her expression. In the underground parking garage of her luxury apartment building, everything was quiet. Most residents were still asleep, enjoying their Christmas Eve morning. Cheryl's black Mercedes-Benz S660 shined under the dim garage lights as she got into the driver's seat and started the car. The navigation screen displayed her first stop, her mother and stepfather's upscale apartment on the Upper West Side. After picking them up, she would head to Timothy and Madison's new home in Albany. The roads were mostly empty, but the fresh snow made driving tricky. Cheryl gripped the wheel carefully, ready to start the day. Would this trip finally bring her family closer? She could only hope. When Cheryl arrived at the Upper West Side, her mother, Betty, was already waiting outside the apartment. She was dressed in a bright red coat and holding a large Gucci bag. Her stepfather, John, got into the back seat without saying a word. "Good morning, Cheryl." Her mother's voice sounded forced, like she was greeting a chauffeur instead of her daughter. Next, Cheryl drove to Timothy and Madison's house in Albany. They had recently moved to a wealthy neighborhood, even though there were rumors that their inheritance was running low. But they still lived in luxury, keeping up appearances. "You're late." Timothy's voice was full of arrogance, as always. Madison stood next to him in a brand-new Gucci coat, holding a matching bag. They both looked like they had just stepped out of a fashion magazine. With everyone in the car, Cheryl took the wheel and drove carefully. Timothy sat in the passenger seat, scrolling through his phone, probably posting another flashy update on social media. Inside the car, the atmosphere was tense. Apart from a few quiet whispers between Betty and Madison, there was barely any conversation. After 3 hours of driving, the snowy peaks of the Rocky Mountains came into view. The breathtaking scenery helped ease some of Cheryl's tension. You can see it now," Timothy suddenly said. Through the snow-covered trees, the grand skytop gazebo appeared. The luxurious hotel, designed in Italian Renaissance style, blended beautifully with the winter landscape. A massive Christmas tree decorated the front entrance, glowing with sparkling lights. Expensive cars pulled up one after another, and wealthy families stepped out. Cheryl parked near the entrance, and a uniformed bellboy approached the car. Just then, everything changed. "You've worked hard to get us here." Timothy's cold voice filled the car. Cheryl turned in her seat, looking at the back row. Timothy's face held a smirk she had never seen before. Betty and John avoided eye contact, while Madison gave a small, knowing smile. A strange, uneasy feeling crept into Cheryl's chest. "What do you mean?" Her voice shook slightly. "The driver's job ends here," Timothy said smoothly. "This hotel is for us, the real family only." Cheryl froze. It felt like the temperature inside the car had dropped to freezing. "I made the reservations," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Oh, the reservations?" Timothy sneered. "They've already been changed, just to our names." Her mother looked uneasy, but said nothing. John stared out the window, uninterested. Madison didn't even bother to hide her cruel grin. One by one, they all stepped out of the car, leaving Cheryl sitting there in shock. Timothy motioned for the bellboy to take their luggage inside. Cheryl's hands trembled as she slowly took out her smartphone. She scrolled to Mark's number and pressed call. After a few rings, his calm voice answered on the other end. "Hello, Cheryl?" "Mark, cancel the reservations." Cheryl's voice was steady, surprisingly calm. "All of them, please." There was a brief silence on the other end. Then, as if understanding everything, Mark replied, "Got it. I'll take care of it right away." Just then, a hotel staff member in a black uniform approached the front desk. Against the snowy white backdrop, the dark uniform stood out sharply. Cheryl watched everything through the car window. "I'm sorry, but we can't find your reservation," the staff member informed them. Timothy's smug smile disappeared. Betty frantically dug through her purse, as if searching for an answer. For the first time, John turned to face the front, looking unsettled. "There must be some mistake," Betty murmured anxiously. Cheryl rolled down her window, slowly and deliberately. It's no mistake, she said, her voice calm and clear. All the reservations have been cancelled.
Goodbye.
Cheryl, wait. Timothy's voice now had a hint of desperation. It was just a joke. You know that, right? But Cheryl had already started the engine. As she gripped the steering wheel, she caught one last glimpse in the rearview mirror. Her family stood there, frozen in shock. Madison's expensive boots sank into the snow. Betty called after her, but her voice faded into the cold wind. Without hesitation, Cheryl pulled away from the hotel, the snow-covered road stretching ahead of her. A single tear slipped down her cheek, not from sadness, but from relief. Her phone began ringing.
Timothy.
She ignored it. Then another call.
Betty.
She ignored that too. Messages flooded in. Why would you do this? It's Christmas Eve. You embarrassed us. Will you refund the hotel costs? At the last message, Cheryl let out a small laugh. In the end, their concerns were always about money. Never about love, never about family. Just calculations. Just appearances. Cheryl kept driving, leaving it all behind. Instead of heading home, she took a different road, toward Mark's penthouse. A sense of peace and clarity settled over her. She glanced in the rearview mirror again, and for the first time, she liked what she saw. The streetlights cast a soft glow on the falling snow, making the night feel quiet, almost magical. The empty back seat was surprisingly comforting. 3 hours later, Cheryl's Mercedes pulled into the underground parking garage of Mark's penthouse. As she stepped into the elevator, a warm feeling spread through her chest. She knew she was going to the right place. When she opened the penthouse door, she was greeted by warmth, the soft glow of the fireplace, the cozy light filling the room. And Mark. Cheryl, are you okay? His voice was full of genuine concern. Cheryl met his eyes and, for the first time in a long time, she truly smiled. Actually, I've never felt better. I feel relieved, Cheryl said softly. Mark listened quietly as he poured 2 glasses of wine. Cheryl told him everything: Timothy's cruel smile, Betty's guilty silence, and the decision she had made. You did the right thing, Mark assured her as he sat on the sofa near the fireplace. Cheryl stared at the wine glass in her hand. But I ruined their Christmas, she muttered. That's not true. Mark's voice was gentle but firm. They ruined their own Christmas. You just chose to protect yourself. Tears filled Cheryl's eyes, not from sadness, but from relief. For years, she had carried a heavy burden. And now, finally, she was free. Her phone vibrated again. This time it was a message from John. Because of your selfishness, you've embarrassed the entire family. Don't ever show your face again. Cheryl didn't even hesitate. She turned off her phone completely. Mark placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, a warmth she had never felt from her own family. Cheryl gazed into the fireplace, her voice steady. Starting tomorrow, a new life begins. I won't let anyone control me anymore. Mark nodded silently. For Cheryl, this was the most meaningful Christmas Eve she had ever experienced. She hadn't lost her family. She had found herself. The diamond necklace from her father shimmered softly in the firelight, as if blessing her choice. The next morning, Christmas Day, Middletown was covered in a soft, white layer of snow. From Mark's penthouse, the view looked like a picture-perfect postcard, snow gently falling between the towering buildings, covering up yesterday's events like a fresh start. Good morning, honey, Mark greeted her, already making coffee. The rich aroma of espresso filled the warm space. I got a call from Skytop Gazebo this morning, Mark said quietly. Your family made quite a scene. Cheryl stood by the window, a warm mug in her hands. I figured as much, she replied calmly. Timothy must have caused a commotion. She turned on her phone, and within seconds, countless notifications flooded the screen. 50+ missed calls. Nearly 150 messages. Most were from Betty and Timothy, with a few from John. Cheryl, do you think this is acceptable? You humiliated us in the hotel lobby. I'll never forgive you. How dare you treat us this way? And then one last message from her mother. We need to talk about money. Call me immediately. Cheryl let out a deep sigh and set her phone down.
She didn't feel guilty.
She didn't feel regret. Instead, she felt free. Mark wrapped his arms around her from behind, his warmth comforting and real. For the first time in a long time, Cheryl wasn't alone. And that, she realized, was the best Christmas gift of all. "I've made up my mind," Cheryl said, ready to face whatever came next. She felt strong and free, no longer weighed down by the past. Turning to Mark, she met his eyes with unshakable determination. "I'm cutting all ties with them," she said firmly. Mark nodded, his expression full of understanding and support. "Are you sure?" he asked gently. "After all, they are your family." "No, they're not," Cheryl answered without hesitation. "A real family loves and supports each other. They were just strangers who cared only about money." They moved to the breakfast table, where Mark had prepared croissants and scrambled eggs, a simple but heartfelt meal. Cheryl took a bite and smiled. This was happiness. This was what she had been searching for. Mark set down his coffee and looked at her seriously. "I have an idea, Cheryl." She raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" "Why don't we live together?" For a moment, Cheryl was speechless. Outside the window, snowflakes fell silently from the sky. "Let's start a new life together," Mark said. Tears filled Cheryl's eyes, not from sadness, but from pure joy. The burdens she had carried for so long were finally gone. And, in their place, she had found something real. "Yes," she whispered, smiling. "That sounds wonderful." Just then, her phone rang again. The screen flashed Mom. Cheryl didn't hesitate. She picked up the phone, blocked the number, then did the same for Timothy and John. She exhaled deeply, feeling lighter than ever. "I've taken a new step," she said, her voice clear and steady. Mark smiled warmly. "I'm proud of you." A few weeks later, mid-January, Middletown was hit by a severe cold wave. From her office window, Cheryl watched the city shiver under the icy wind. Then, her intercom buzzed. "Ms. Miller, there's a visitor for you in the lobby," her secretary said. "A Mrs. Betty White." Cheryl's hands froze over her keyboard. Betty White. It was the first time she had heard her mother's name since Christmas Eve. She took a steady breath. "Understood. I'll be right there." In the lobby, Cheryl's high heels echoed on the marble floor as she walked forward. Her mother sat on a visitor's sofa, but she looked different. Gone was the flashy designer clothing. Instead, she wore a plain gray coat, her makeup faded, her face tired and worn. "May I come in?" Betty's voice had none of its usual sharpness or arrogance. Cheryl hesitated, then gave a small nod. Silently, she led her mother to the elevator. Upstairs, Cheryl gestured toward the sofa in the reception area. Outside, light snow swirled in the winter air. Her mother took a deep breath. "I came here because I needed to talk," Cheryl's mother said softly. She sat across from Cheryl, a cup of coffee between them. "We've reached our limit." Cheryl wasn't surprised. She had expected this. After years of reckless spending, her father's inheritance was almost gone. Her stepfather's real estate investments had failed, leaving them deep in debt. Timothy was struggling too. He couldn't afford his new car payments and was falling behind on rent. "We need help," her mother said, her voice trembling. Cheryl remained calm. "Mom, is this about money?" Her mother hesitated. "Yes," she admitted. "For our living expenses, Timothy's car loan, and—" "Mom, that's enough." Cheryl cut her off firmly. "I'm not the family bank anymore. I've chosen to live my own life." Her mother's face fell, but Cheryl's decision was final. "But we're family," Betty said desperately. Cheryl sighed. "What does family really mean?" she asked quietly. "On Christmas, you all treated me like a chauffeur. You stood by while Timothy smirked at me. Is that what family does?" The room fell into a heavy silence. "Listen, Cheryl," her mother whispered, tears in her eyes. "I regret what happened that day. But I'm really struggling. I need your help." Cheryl slowly stood up and walked toward the window. In the distance, she could see the building her father once managed. She kept her back turned as she spoke. Mom, go home. Her voice was steady. And don't come back. My life is mine now. A long silence filled the room. Her mother seemed like she wanted to say something, but in the end, she simply stood up and left. The sound of the door closing echoed in the room. Cheryl let out a deep sigh. She returned to her desk and touched the necklace her father had given her. Strangely, the weight in her chest felt a little lighter. Months passed, and spring arrived in Middletown. From Mark's penthouse, the city looked completely different. The park below was full of cherry blossoms, their soft pink petals dancing in the breeze. Cheryl held a cup of morning coffee, staring at the beautiful scene. Mark's voice broke the silence. Cheryl, what are you thinking about? She turned and smiled at him. Just everything, she said. So much has changed in these 4 months.
And it was true.
She had announced her engagement to Mark. She had been promoted to department head, leading a new investment team. Her talents were finally being recognized. She hadn't heard from her mother at all. Timothy's flashy social media posts had vanished. Later, she learned from a colleague that they had moved from their luxury apartment to a much smaller one. Now, they were living a simpler life. Mark stepped beside her, watching the cherry blossoms. Any regrets? He asked. Cheryl looked at the blooming trees, the city shining in the sunlight. She smiled. None at all. This is the life I chose. Cheryl smiled as she touched the necklace her father had given her. I've made my choice, she said firmly. She had come to understand something important. Real family isn't just about blood. It's about love, support, and understanding. That evening, Cheryl and Mark dined at the same elegant restaurant where they had first met. As the city lights sparkled outside, Mark leaned forward, excitement in his eyes. I have big news, he said. We're expanding with a new hotel chain on the West Coast. He took a deep breath before adding, and I want you to be part of it as our investment advisor. Cheryl didn't hesitate. Of course, she said with a confident nod. Everything in her life, work, love, and happiness, was finally in balance. She felt it deep inside. This was the start of something new. Cheryl raised her glass of wine. To our future. Mark smiled, lifting his glass to meet hers. The soft chime of the glasses touching sounded like the first note of a brand new chapter. My name is Susan, and I am a 55-year-old company employee who has spent nearly 31 years living and working overseas. I moved abroad with my husband and daughter, building a life far from home. However, as time has passed, things have started to change. My daughter is now in her final year of college, and by next year, she will graduate. She dreams of working for a company in Germany, and lately, I have been wondering if it is time for me to return home as well. It's not just about my daughter's job. There are other things weighing on my mind. I have been struggling with decisions about my future, especially when it comes to my husband and our life together. Moving back to Germany feels like a big decision, one that I need to discuss with my parents. I have also been reflecting on my career, as I work at my father's company and have done so ever since I graduated from college nearly 31 years ago. After finishing my degree, I was sent to the US to manage our company's overseas branch. Our business mainly focused on exporting Germany goods, and despite being a relatively small branch with only a few experienced employees besides myself, it contributed significantly to the company's overall sales. Many of our customers were wealthy individuals who sought high-quality Germany products, which made our exports quite successful. One of the reasons my father chose me for the position was my strong language skills. Since I was fluent in multiple languages, he believed I would be the perfect person to oversee the U.S. branch and handle communication between our clients and headquarters. While our veteran employees managed the business negotiations, my main role was to serve as an interpreter and handle financial operations. It was a big responsibility, but I was determined to prove myself. Even before officially taking on the role, I had been preparing for my move while still in college. I worked closely with the employees who would be transferring to the U.S. with me, ensuring that everything was in place for the branch's operations. My parents had mixed feelings about my move. My mother, in particular, seemed anxious. I still remember the worried look on her face when she said, "Be careful." My brother, on the other hand, felt guilty that I was the one going instead of him. He had always believed that working abroad should have been his responsibility, but there was one major problem. He didn't speak a word of any foreign language. Knowing he couldn't take my place, he told me, I should be the one going, but I wouldn't survive without knowing the language. I'm counting on you to do well in my place. Although my brother wasn't an officer at the company back then, he now runs the business. Maybe that's why he felt so bad about sending me overseas. To make up for it, he tried to do something for me before I left. One day, he introduced me to a close friend of his, thinking it might help me feel less alone.
This is Paul, he said.
He's been to the US a few times for work, so he knows what it's like there. I think you two would get along. I wasn't very interested at first. Dating didn't seem like a good idea when I was about to leave the country. I was already busy with work and preparations, and the thought of getting into a relationship at that time felt unnecessary. But when I met Paul, he surprised me. He was charming, easy to talk to, and had a refreshing personality. To my surprise, we had a lot in common. Our conversations flowed effortlessly, and I found myself enjoying his company more than I had expected. I never realized how well my brother understood my taste in people until that moment. Slowly, I started to feel drawn to Paul. What began as a casual introduction turned into something more. We ended up dating for about 7 months before I officially moved overseas after graduating from college. Looking back, that decision shaped my entire life. Now, decades later, I find myself at another major crossroads. Do I stay where I am, or do I return home? The answer isn't simple, and as I stand on the edge of yet another big change, I can't help but wonder what the future holds. As I was preparing to set up our company's branch in the US, my life became incredibly busy. During that time, Paul and I saw each other almost every day. He had known from the beginning that I was going to move overseas, and despite that, we grew close. When our relationship became more serious, Paul brought up something unexpected. He told me he was thinking of moving to the US as well. At first, I was surprised, but his words made me happy. The idea of him being with me in a foreign country was reassuring, but I knew that because of work, I couldn't make any decisions based on emotions alone. Setting up the US branch was my top priority, and I couldn't let anything get in the way of that. One day, Paul excitedly told me, "A friend of mine works in the same city where you'll be living, Susan. I've been looking into jobs there too. I think I can make this work." Hearing how determined he was to be with me made my heart swell. Not only did Paul seem serious about our relationship, but he also seemed serious about building a future together. He even talked about marriage, and everything felt like it was falling into place. Things moved smoothly from that point on, and after much thought, Paul and I decided to get married. But not everyone was thrilled about it. My father, in particular, didn't seem pleased. "I don't know about this Paul guy," he said one evening, frowning. "He always knows exactly what to say, and something about that doesn't sit right with me." I tried to defend Paul, explaining how much he cared about me and how determined he was to be by my side, but my father wasn't convinced. Despite his concerns, my mother was more open-minded. She reassured him, saying, "Paul is a friend of our son. If he trusts him, then we should too." Eventually, my father gave in, and after dating for about a year, Paul and I got married. We had our wedding in Germany, surrounded by family and friends, and afterward, we moved to the US to start our new life together. Our honeymoon was spent exploring the country that we would soon call home, and everything felt like a dream. Once we settled in, things progressed well. Paul managed to find a job through a friend's company, and my work at the new branch went better than expected. Customers responded positively, and we quickly gained a strong reputation. I sent regular reports back to my father, keeping him updated on our progress. But despite my good news, my father still seemed uneasy. Every time we spoke, he would ask the same question. "Are you and Paul getting along okay? I heard he found a job there too, but is everything really all right?" No matter how many times I reassured him that we were doing well, he never seemed fully convinced. It was as if he had a gut feeling that something wasn't right. On the other hand, my brother, who had always supported my relationship, trusted Paul completely. He often told me, "If you ever need anything, just rely on me. I'm always here to help." For a while, life continued smoothly, and I had no reason to doubt Paul. But then, one day, I received an unexpected call from my brother. His voice was serious. "Susan, there's something you need to know," he said. "The company Paul used to work for in Germany went bankrupt." I was shocked. Paul had never mentioned anything about this before. My brother continued, explaining that there had been a major financial scandal. Apparently, someone within the company had been involved in accounting fraud, manipulating the financial records to hide stolen money. Since the books appeared accurate, no one noticed the problem until it was too late. The owner, who was a friend of my brother, had consulted him about the company's struggles, but the financial damage was too severe. Eventually, they had no choice but to shut the business down. The more I listened, the more uneasy I felt. Why hadn't Paul told me any of this? Did he know about the fraud? And if he did, was he involved? 1,000 questions flooded my mind, but one thing was clear. Paul had kept a huge secret from me. I quickly put the news out of my mind since we were both so busy with work. After moving to the US, we hardly ever went back to Germany. Instead, our parents and Paul's parents visited us. They worried about us and often came to check on us while traveling. They would stay for about a week, sightseeing and shopping while spending time with us. My brother also visited for work, and about 3 years after we had set up the branch, he made a comment that caught us off guard. "The branch is doing great," he said with a grin. "Maybe it's time you two started thinking about having kids." Paul turned red at his words, but to be honest, I had already been thinking about it. Not because of my brother's comment, but because it felt like the right time. A short while later, I found out I was pregnant. When I shared the news, both our parents were overjoyed. I wasn't sure whether to give birth in the US or go back to Germany. My mother, however, offered to come to the US and help out, which made the decision easier. Even if I had returned to Germany, the company would have been fine since we had experienced employees handling things there. But my mother felt it would be difficult for Paul to be left alone while I was away. Paul, on the other hand, didn't seem to agree. "It feels wrong to have your mother come all this way. Maybe it's better if you go back to Germany, Susan," he said more than once. Even after we decided that my mother would come, he kept bringing it up, insisting that it would be easier for me to give birth in Germany. As my due date got closer, my mother arrived to stay with us and help prepare for the baby's arrival. I was happy to have her there, but at the same time, I worried about my father being left alone. One day, while Paul was out, my mother spoke to me quietly. "Actually, your father told me to come and take care of you," she admitted. She explained that my father still didn't fully trust Paul. He was afraid that if I went back to Germany and left Paul alone in the US, he might cheat on me. My mother was worried about me too, so she didn't mind coming. She also liked the calm and pleasant weather here. Besides that, she had another reason for staying with me. She had been living with my brother and his wife, but their relationship was strained. She wanted a change of scenery and some time away from their tense home. She shared all of this with me, confiding in me about her true feelings. I understood why my father was worried. Paul was very friendly and got along easily with women, which sometimes made me feel uneasy. There were moments when I wondered if he might be unfaithful if left alone. Knowing that my father was keeping such a close watch on Paul reassured me. It showed that he still cared about me deeply. Eventually, I gave birth to our daughter safely. Paul's parents traveled all the way to the US to be there for her birth, which made me happy. My mother also stayed with us for 4 months to help take care of the baby. Paul was helpful during that time, so when my mother returned to Germany, she left everything in his hands, trusting that he would continue to support me. But the moment my mother left, everything changed. Paul, who had been helping with housework and childcare, suddenly stopped doing anything. "Please keep taking care of our daughter like you have been," I told him, frustrated. Instead of understanding, Paul snapped back at me. "I'm busy with work too. You're at home all day, so you should be able to handle it alone." His words hurt. He made it seem like I had nothing to do, but the truth was, I had already started working from home for the company while also caring for our daughter. I was just as busy as he was, if not more. But no matter how many times I tried to explain, Paul wouldn't listen. In the end, I had to take care of our daughter, do all the housework, and manage my job by myself. Just as my father had feared before we got married, I started losing trust in Paul. But I didn't have time to dwell on it. I managed by leaning on the friends I had made in the US, and with their help, I raised my daughter, Jessica. From a young age, Jessica often said and did things that surprised me. There were moments that left me speechless. Before she even turned 1, something strange happened. One day, she was smiling and waving at empty space, something she had never done before. I didn't think much of it at first, but later that day, I got a call from my mother. My grandmother had passed away. I froze. A strange thought crossed my mind. What if my grandmother had come to visit us one last time before passing? And what if Jessica could somehow see her? When I told Paul about it, he didn't take me seriously. Jessica had just waved by coincidence, he said, brushing it off. That kind of thing isn't possible. At first, I agreed with him. But then, something even stranger happened. When Paul's grandfather passed away some time later, Jessica pointed outside the window and kept staring as if she saw something. We were living in a high-rise apartment, so there was nothing outside for her to be looking at. But she kept pointing, as if she was trying to tell me something. Not long after, we got a call with the news. Paul's grandfather had passed away. I was shocked. I wanted to say something about what Jessica had done, but I knew Paul would only make fun of me. So I kept silent. As Jessica grew older and started talking, she said even more strange things. One day, she looked at me with a serious face and said, "Uncle's baby is going to be a boy." I was surprised by Jessica's sudden words and asked her what she meant. She confidently said that my brother's family was going to have a baby boy. At that time, my sister-in-law hadn't even announced that she was pregnant, so I didn't believe it. But out of curiosity, I called my brother. When I told him, he was shocked. "How do you know that?" "My wife just told me today." At first, he didn't believe me when I hinted that the baby might be a boy. But months later, when my sister-in-law actually gave birth to a baby boy, my brother got scared. That's when I finally told him about Jessica's strange ability. Unlike Paul, who always dismissed it, my brother believed in her right away. He told me, "If Jessica ever says anything like this again, let me know immediately." As Jessica grew up, her mysterious ability didn't fade. Every now and then, she would say something unexpected, and later, it would turn out to be true. It wasn't like she could predict world events, but when it came to personal matters, she seemed to know things before they happened. When Jessica started looking for a job as an adult, she insisted on moving to Germany, but she never explained why. I didn't understand her reason, but I trusted her. She had always been different from the rest of us. Paul and I wanted her to stay in the US and find work here, but in the end, we decided to respect her decision. At the same time, I started thinking about my own future. The branch was running smoothly, and there were trusted employees who could take over my work. Returning to Germany started to feel like a real possibility. But when I brought it up, Paul immediately said, "I'm not coming back." Lately, our relationship had been strained. We barely spoke at home, and I started to wonder if separating wouldn't be such a bad idea. Since Jessica was going back to Germany for her job search, I thought it was the perfect time to talk to my parents and brother about my future. When I told Paul the first was thinking about leaving with Jessica, he actually seemed happy. "You don't have to come back. I'll stay here alone," he said, without hesitation. His response made it clear he understood what I was thinking, and he was fine with the idea of a divorce. It made me realize just how distant we had become over the past 31 years. When we first moved to the US, we had been so close, but now we were like strangers. I made my decision. I would go back to Germany with my daughter. At least for a while, I would stay at my parents' house and figure out my next steps. One day, while Jessica was out job hunting, I sat down with my parents and told them I was seriously considering divorcing Paul. They listened carefully and then told me, "Do what feels right for you." Their support made me feel much lighter, as if a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Feeling a little nostalgic, I took out some old photo albums and started flipping through them. There were pictures from our honeymoon, memories from when Paul and I were happy together. Just then, Jessica came home and noticed the pictures. She leaned over and looked curiously. "You and Dad were so close back then," she said softly. Without thinking, I spoke the truth out loud. As Jessica stared at the honeymoon photos, she suddenly muttered, "Dad is lying, Mom. He doesn't care about you at all." Her words caught me off guard. "What?" I asked, unsure if I had heard her correctly. Jessica trembled as she continued. With her strange ability, she revealed something shocking. "Dad married you and moved to the US to run away because he stole money from his company." My heart pounded. This couldn't be a joke. If what she said was true, it explained a lot. It reminded me of the accounting fraud at Paul's old company, the same one my brother had once mentioned. Could Paul really have been involved? At that moment, my brother, who was also home, looked just as shocked as I was. Then, Jessica handed us something that looked like a passbook or an old financial ledger. "I found this in Dad's room," she said. "It looks like proof of the fraud." I was stunned. Not only had she discovered this, but it almost felt like she had returned to expose Paul's past. Paul had never been very involved in parenting, so he and Jessica weren't close. That's why I wasn't too upset at the thought of him getting caught. No matter what happened to him next, I had already made up my mind to leave him. I was ready to rush to the police, but then I hesitated. The crime had happened 26 years ago. Wasn't it too late to do anything? Had the statute of limitations expired? That's when my brother spoke up, sharing something important. The statute of limitations stops counting while the person is abroad. Since Paul has been in the US all this time, the case should still be valid. Hearing this, I was about to go straight to the police when my brother stopped me. "Let's contact the owner of Paul's old company first. He was already trying to build a case about the fraud. He'll be happy to see this evidence." I decided to let my brother handle things. After a while, the police contacted us, and I handed over the passbook and ledger as evidence. I worried that Paul might find out, but there was no contact from him, and we didn't reach out to him either. Even though I had already decided to leave Paul, knowing the truth about his past felt like a punch to the stomach. I had spent so many years with this man, and now I realized he had been living a lie all along. But before I could process everything, Jessica revealed something else. "I came back to Germany because I didn't want to be around Dad," she said. "He's been cheating on you, Mom." I had my suspicions, but hearing it from my daughter made it real. "How do you know that?" I asked, my voice shaking. Jessica hesitated for a moment before saying, "I've known for a long time. I just didn't know how to tell you." She had proof. She even had photos of Paul's affairs. Knowing that she had kept this painful secret for so long, afraid to tell me, made my heart ache. But more than that, it was terrifying to realize just how much Paul had been hiding from me all these years. As the police investigation continued, suspicion grew that Paul was involved in the accounting fraud. The police wanted to question him, but we knew he would never return willingly. My brother and I didn't know what to do until Jessica came up with a clever idea. "Tell him that Grandpa is seriously ill and we need to talk about his inheritance. He'll come back for sure," she suggested. She wasn't wrong. Paul had always been interested in what he might inherit after my father passed away. He had even asked me before how much I would receive. So, following Jessica's plan, I called Paul and told him that my father was in critical condition. Just as Jessica had predicted, Paul rushed back home without hesitation. When I met him at the airport, he greeted me with an eager expression and asked, "Has your father passed away already?" I stood there silently. The next moment, several police officers surrounded him. Realizing he had been tricked, Paul's face twisted in anger. He started shouting at me. "You tricked me? This is cowardly." I looked him in the eye and replied, "You've been deceiving me all along. And, on top of that, you've been cheating on me. That's what's truly disgraceful." After his arrest, Paul was confronted with the evidence of his financial crimes. At first, he admitted his guilt, thinking the statute of limitations had already expired. But when he realized it hadn't, he tried to take back his confession. It was too late. With Paul in custody, I hired a lawyer to handle the divorce, and finally, I was able to officially end my marriage to him. My brother, who had introduced us all those years ago, felt guilty and apologized many times. But I didn't blame him. He hadn't known what kind of person Paul really was. Now that I am divorced, I am also pursuing alimony. I've left everything in my lawyer's hands and just need to be patient as the process unfolds. Thanks to my daughter and the evidence we had, the case of the accounting fraud will finally be resolved. And with proof of Paul's infidelity, I am confident I will receive the support I deserve. One day, feeling curious, I asked Jessica if she knew who she would marry in the future. She smiled playfully and said, "I can see things about other people, but not about myself. Knowing my own future would make life boring, don't you think?" Her words made me laugh. Looking at my daughter, I realized that despite everything, I was no longer afraid of the future. I would continue to listen to her advice, and together, just the two of us, we would live a peaceful and happy life. You got more than $5 million, right? My mother-in-law says with a dreamy smile. We've already started building a duplex for all of us to live in together. I even included my dream kitchen. Her words hit me like a brick. Before I can even react, my husband, Owen, adds, "I quit my job. I'm planning to start a business using Kate's inheritance." His voice is filled with excitement, as if he's just made the best decision of his life. I feel my stomach twist. "Wait a second," I say, trying to keep my voice calm. "I told you, I haven't received any inheritance yet. You quit your job. You're building a duplex? What is going on?" Owen and his mother exchange a look. Then, as if things couldn't get any worse, my father-in-law jumps into the conversation. "Don't try to fool us, Kate," he says, laughing. "It's obvious you got the inheritance. How about we take a nice trip before the house is finished? South Africa sounds perfect, don't you think?" I stare at them in shock. Do they really think they can just take my mother's money and use it however they want? The inheritance is all I have left from her, yet they are already making plans for it as if it belongs to them. I feel my anger rising, but I don't know what to say. How did things come to this? A few months ago, everything was normal. My name is Kate. I'm 40 years old and work as a high school teacher. My husband, Owen, is 42 and works in an office. We've been married for 13 years, and we have a daughter, Leah. Ever since she was born, my life has been all about working and raising her. Today, I'm taking Leah to visit my mother in the hospital. She has been sick for a while, and we try to see her as often as we can. "Grandma, it's been a while," Leah says happily as we step into the hospital room. Well, Leah, my sweet girl," my mother says, smiling warmly. She reaches out to stroke Leah's hair. Her hand feels thinner than before, and her face looks pale. Seeing her like this makes my chest tighten. Next to her bed, a middle-aged man in a suit and glasses stands quietly. When I nod at him, he nods back and leaves the room without a word. "Mom, who is that man?" I ask, watching the door close behind him. "Just an acquaintance," she says softly. "You don't need to worry about it." Then, changing the subject, she asks, "Kate, are you doing well? And Owen, how is he?" Her eyes, a soft shade of blue, sparkle gently as she smiles. My mother met my father when he was running an import-export business overseas. She moved to the Cape Town as his wife and built a life here. Raising a child in a foreign country must have been hard for her, but she and my father worked together to give me a good life. If only I had known back then what was coming. I am able to work as a teacher today because my mother taught me many important things when I was little. She always encouraged me to learn and be kind to others. I am deeply grateful to both my parents for raising me with love in a comfortable and happy home. Our family was well off, and I had a wonderful childhood. But things changed after my father passed away a few years ago. My mother was left alone, and over time, her health started to decline. Eventually, she became too weak and had to be hospitalized. Since she could no longer manage the family business, she decided to transfer it to a relative. Now, she spends her days quietly in the hospital, resting and recovering. "Mom, how are you feeling today?" I ask, sitting beside her bed. "I'm fine, dear," she says with a gentle smile. "Is there anything you need?" She shakes her head. "Just having you and Leah visit me is more than enough." It makes me very happy. We spend a long time talking, sharing stories, and enjoying each other's company. Leah, my 11-year-old daughter, excitedly tells my mother about her school life, the books she has been reading, and all the little things that interest her. My mother listens patiently, smiling as Leah talks. Leah is at that tricky age where she is starting to become more independent, but we still have a great relationship. Even if I try to be as fair as possible and ignore my own feelings as a mother, I truly believe she is growing into a bright and kind-hearted child. After spending a few hours with my mother, Leah, and I finally head home. We're home. I call out as I unlock the door and step inside. Welcome back. Owen, my husband, greets us. How's my mother-in-law doing? She's the same as always, I reply. How about you? How was your seminar? Oh, I heard some great things today, he says, sounding excited. I'm really looking forward to the next one. Recently, Owen has been attending seminars about quitting his job and starting a side business. I know he wants to make more money, but honestly, our financial situation is fine. His job might not be at a top company, but it's stable. With my salary as well, we don't struggle. Still, his obsession with money makes me uncomfortable. It reminds me too much of his parents. Ever since we got married, I have felt uneasy about how his parents behave when it comes to money. They are extremely stingy, always talking about saving and cutting costs. Even worse, they have a habit of asking us for small amounts of money every time we see them. It's frustrating. They never even give Leah a Christmas present, which upsets me. Thankfully, my in-laws live far away, so we don't have to see them often. And, to be fair, Owen does his share of housework. As long as things stay this way, I guess I can manage. I had my mother, my husband, and my daughter, Leah. Our life was simple but peaceful, and I was happy. I never wished for anything more. But then, one day, everything changed. I received a sudden phone call from the hospital. The doctor on the other end of the line sounded serious. Your mother's condition has worsened. She is in critical condition. Please come quickly. My heart dropped. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Without wasting a second, I grabbed my things and rushed to the hospital with Owen and Leah. When we arrived, my mother was lying in bed, barely breathing. Her face looked pale, and her body seemed so weak. I could feel my hands shaking as I stepped closer to her. Mom, I cried, my voice breaking. Grandma, Leah called out, her eyes filled with tears. My mother slowly opened her eyes. She looked at me and smiled gently, despite the pain she was in. Her voice was weak, but her words were filled with warmth. Kate, I always wanted you to be happy. Take care of Leah. She is the most precious thing in the world. I love you. Those were the last words my mother ever spoke. Tears streamed down my face as I held her hand, unable to stop crying. My mother had raised me with love, always putting me first. She had adored Leah more than anything. Now she was gone. At her funeral, I stood in front of her coffin, looking at her peaceful face one last time. I cried, and Leah cried beside me. It was the hardest goodbye I had ever faced. A few weeks later, an unexpected letter arrived at our house. It was from a law firm. I had no idea why they were contacting me. Confused, I opened the envelope. Inside, I found a letter that made my hands tremble as I read it. I have been entrusted with your mother's will. She has left all of her inheritance to you. I was shocked. My mother and I had never talked about inheritance before. I had no idea she had even made a will. I felt confused, but I knew I needed answers. So I decided to visit the law firm on my own. When I arrived, I was greeted by a middle-aged man wearing glasses. As soon as I saw him, I recognized him. He was the same man who had been in my mother's hospital room. You were with my mother in the hospital, I said, feeling both surprised and curious. Yes, he nodded. I met you there. Your mother asked me to take care of her will. His voice was kind, and for some reason I felt like crying again. But then, what he told me next left me completely speechless. Your mother's total inheritance after taxes is $600 million. My breath caught in my throat. $600 million? Yes, he confirmed. When your father passed away, you gave up your right to his inheritance so your mother could receive everything. Over the years, her personal assets grew. Now, all of it belongs to you. I knew my parents had been wealthy, but I never imagined they had left behind so much. I had never asked them for money, not even after getting married. I avoided the topic of inheritance because it felt unlucky to discuss. Now, standing there, I felt dizzy. But deep in my heart, I knew this was more than just money. This was my mother's final gift to me. It was her way of showing her love, even after she was gone. I left all the legal matters to Daniel. Your mother loved you more than anything, he told me with a kind smile. She asked me to help you in any way you need. If you ever have any questions or need assistance, please don't hesitate to ask. His words brought a sense of comfort during such a difficult time. Thank you, I said, bowing my head several times to show my gratitude. I really appreciate your help. Daniel nodded, and with that I left his office, still trying to process everything that had happened. Time passed, and soon it was the 50th day memorial service for my mother. In our culture, this day was important, a time to pray for the peace of a loved one's soul. I was still grieving, trying to cope with the emptiness left by her absence. But during this time, my husband, Owen, started asking about my mother's inheritance more and more frequently. When we first got married, my father was still alive and running his business. Because of that, Owen had always known that my family was wealthy. He was aware, but he never talked about it much before. Now, after my mother's passing, his interest in the inheritance had grown stronger. Each time he brought it up, I told him to stop. Owen, please. I'm still mourning, I said firmly. He would go quiet for a while, but it never lasted. Before I knew it, he would find subtle ways to bring up the topic again. If that wasn't bad enough, my in-laws were even worse. When they attended my mother's memorial service, my father-in-law pulled me aside and spoke in a casual yet knowing tone. Kate, if you're feeling overwhelmed by the inheritance, we can help, he said, as if he were doing me a favor. Huh? I asked, confused. He smiled as though he was giving me wise advice. You see, we've had our fair share of inheritance troubles in the past. When a family member dies without a spouse or unmarried siblings pass away, things can get complicated. If you're struggling, you can always talk to us. That's right, my mother-in-law chimed in. We're here for you. You can rely on us. It was strange. They had never once offered to help with anything before. They had never shown any interest in supporting me or my family. But now, suddenly, they were eager to help with my mother's money? I didn't know what to say, so I just gave them a vague smile and nodded. For months passed after my mother's death. Owen, who had been quiet for a while, finally lost his patience. Hey, he said one night, his voice sharp. Have you received your mother's inheritance yet? A bad feeling spread through me. I didn't trust him, so I lied. No, the process is complicated. It hasn't been completed yet. In reality, everything had already been settled. Daniel had advised me to keep the inheritance safe, so I had placed the passbook containing the money in a secure deposit box. But something inside me told me not to tell Owen. Really? He asked, narrowing his eyes. But it's been 4 months. Shouldn't it be done by now? Yeah, so what? I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Well, never mind, he said, suddenly acting cheerful. I'm going to bed. I watched as he walked toward the bedroom, looking far too pleased with himself. Something didn't feel right. That night, as I got ready for work the next day, an uneasy feeling settled in my chest. I couldn't explain it, but I knew something was wrong. The next evening, after dinner, Kate and Leah were tidying up the kitchen when the doorbell suddenly rang. I'll get it, Leah called out, hurrying to the door. Kate wiped her hands on a towel and peeked out from the kitchen. To her surprise, her in-laws were standing at the doorstep, looking far too cheerful. Right behind them was Owen, returning from work. Kate's stomach twisted. Why are they here? Leah, go to your room, Owen said quickly. Leah hesitated, looking between her mother and father. Sensing the tension, she quietly obeyed and went upstairs. Kate folded her arms. What's going on? She asked, already feeling uneasy. Never mind that, her father-in-law said, grinning widely. We have something to celebrate today. Before Kate could respond, he walked straight into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and grabbed a beer, acting as if he owned the place. Celebrate, she repeated, her eyes narrowing. You inherited over $500 million, didn't you? Her mother-in-law said with a dreamy smile. We've already started building a duplex for all of us to live in together. It even comes with a beautiful modern kitchen, just like I always wanted. Kate felt her heart drop. What? She gasped. What are you talking about? Owen stepped forward, looking pleased with himself. Kate, you should be happy, he said. We made a great decision. We used half of our savings and the money Mom and Dad set aside as a down payment for the house. Kate felt her breath quicken. What do you mean we? She demanded. Owen continued, ignoring her anger. The loan is under my name, he said with a smirk, but since you inherited so much, you can just pay it all off at once with your money. It's only fair to give back to my parents. Kate could barely process what she was hearing. You took out a loan? Owen nodded, completely unbothered. And that's not all, he added casually. I quit my job. I've decided to start a business using your inheritance. Kate's stomach turned. Wait a second. What are you saying? I told you I haven't received any inheritance yet. And now you're telling me you quit your job? And what's this about a duplex? Her mother-in-law waved her hand dismissively. Don't lie, Kate. We know you got the money. Her father-in-law chuckled. Before the house is finished, let's take a trip to South Africa. Kate's head spun as Owen and his mother excitedly discussed their plans, as if they were the ones who inherited the money. Then Owen turned to her, smirking. You're so stingy, Kate. Her blood ran cold. We looked into it because you kept lying about not receiving the inheritance, he continued. You can't refuse an inheritance if you don't process the paperwork within 4 months. So whether you did or didn't handle it, you still got the money. Kate froze. Owen grinned. Considering how successful your father's business was, we figured there must be at least $500 million. We'll be living a comfortable life, thanks to you. Thank you, Kate, her mother-in-law added with a sly smile. Make sure to prepare the money for the duplex as soon as possible. And don't forget Owen's capital for his new business. Kate felt lightheaded. These people, her own husband and his family, were planning to use her mother's inheritance however they pleased. They wanted to spend it on themselves, on luxuries, on a house Kate never agreed to, on a business Owen had no experience running. Her body trembled with anger. She wanted to scream. She wanted to tell them off right then and there. But she couldn't. Leah was in the next room. Taking a deep breath, Kate swallowed her rage, but she knew one thing for sure. She would never let them take what her mother left her. Not a single cent. I'm going out for a bit, Kate called out, but no one paid attention. Owen and his parents were too busy excitedly talking about how they would spend her inheritance. They laughed and made plans as if the money was already theirs. Kate felt suffocated. She couldn't stay in that house a second longer. Without grabbing her wallet or even a jacket, she stepped outside. The night air was cool against her skin, and as soon as she took a few steps, tears started falling. She didn't try to stop them. She walked aimlessly, her feet leading her to Kruger National Park, the place where she used to go with her mother. Sitting on a bench, she buried her face in her hands and cried, making sure to keep her sobs quiet. Her heart felt broken. She wasn't just sad. She was furious. No matter how much she tried to calm down, the anger wouldn't go away. Her own husband and in-laws had completely betrayed her. They didn't care about her feelings or her mother's memory. They only cared about money. But she couldn't just walk away and demand a divorce. She had Leah to think about. Her mother's final words echoed in her mind. Take care of Leah above all else. More tears spilled down her face. Suddenly, a soft voice spoke nearby. Are you okay? Kate gasped and looked up. A familiar face stood in front of her, speaking gently. 4 days later, Kate called Owen and his parents to meet her at a private restaurant room. So, you finally came home after disappearing, Owen scoffed as she sat down. Did you go withdraw the money? You really shouldn't leave home without telling your husband exactly where you're going, her father-in-law added smugly. Kate ignored their words and reached into her bag. She pulled out a document and placed it on the table. It was a divorce notice already filled out. Owen, I want a divorce, she said firmly. Owen's face went pale.
What?
What are you saying? His parents exchanged shocked looks. I can't be with you anymore, Kate said, her voice steady. Owen's face turned red with anger. You're leaving me just because you got the inheritance? You've changed, Kate. You've become a greedy miser. Kate's patience snapped. I changed? Ever since I inherited my mother's money, you have been out of control, she shot back. You quit your job, decided we'd live with your parents without asking me, and even took out a loan using MY money to build a 3-family house. Then, you planned a vacation to South Africa with MY inheritance. Who is the one who changed, Owen? Owen slammed his hand on the table. You can't just divorce me like this. That's right, his mother added quickly. Our savings are shared property. Half of that inheritance belongs to Owen. Exactly, his father nodded. If you divorce him, we're taking half of the $500 million with us. They were practically foaming at the mouth as they leaned forward, ready to fight. But before Kate could respond, the door to the private room suddenly slid open. A small, clear voice rang out. Dad, Grandpa, and Grandma, you should know better. The inheritance Mom received doesn't become shared property, right, Mr. Daniel? Everyone turned in shock. Standing at the doorway was Leah, and right beside her was Attorney Daniel. Owen's face drained of color. His parents froze. Kate sat back, finally feeling a sense of relief. Her daughter had just changed everything. I'm Attorney Daniel, the man said calmly. Kate's mother entrusted me with this matter, and I have been advising her every step of the way. Owen looked flustered.
He was clearly not expecting this.
That's all fine and good, but wait, the inheritance isn't shared property, he asked, his voice rising. Daniel remained calm. That's correct, he said firmly. An inheritance received from a deceased parent does not become shared property. It is not subject to division in a divorce. Owen's face twisted in disbelief. You've got to be kidding me. This has to be a mistake, his father shouted. This can't be happening, his mother added, looking just as shocked. I watched their reactions, feeling both angry and amazed. They really thought my mother's inheritance would automatically belong to them. They had already made plans for my money, assuming they could do whatever they wanted with it. Owen clenched his fists. If that's the case, then there's even more reason not to divorce, he shouted. I won't let you leave me, Kate. I'll never let you go. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked desperate. Then, a calm but firm voice cut through the room. Stop it already. Everyone turned toward Leah. She stood her ground, looking directly at her father. Ever since Mom got the inheritance, have you even thought about her once? She asked, her voice steady. Owen opened his mouth, but no words came out. Grandpa, Grandma, Leah continued, turning to my in-laws, you only ever talk about money. You never once asked how I was feeling or how Mom was doing. I can't consider people like you as family. Owen and his parents looked completely stunned. That night when I ran away, Leah had followed me. I had been sitting in the park, crying over how my own husband and his parents had betrayed me, when Leah ran up to me. Mom, she had said, Dad, Grandpa, and Grandma only care about money. They want to take Grandma's money for themselves. I'm on your side. Let's fight this together. Hearing my daughter say those words had given me the strength to stand up for myself. That's when I called Daniel and arranged this meeting. Leah, it's not like that, Owen said quickly. Dad wants you to be happy. That's right, dear, my mother-in-law added sweetly. You'd be happier living with us, wouldn't you? A child shouldn't interfere in these matters, my father-in-law said sternly. Leah looked completely disgusted. I'm going with Mom, she said firmly. I can't stand being with you anymore. Owen's face turned red with rage. You can't just divorce me like this, he yelled. I'll hire a lawyer. We'll get that money one way or another. If that's the case, Daniel said calmly, I will handle it from here. He turned to Owen. The issue here is whether there are serious reasons for divorce. You quit your job without discussing it. You used household savings without permission. You made big financial decisions without your wife. And most importantly, Leah is saying she doesn't want to stay with you. These are all valid points for divorce. Owen looked shaken. But there's more, Daniel continued. Leah recorded everything. We have proof of all of you begging for Kate's inheritance. That recording will be used as evidence. Owen slumped in his chair. His parents turned pale. They had lost. I took Leah's hand and stood up. We're leaving, I said calmly. Together, we walked out of the restaurant, leaving Owen and his greedy parents behind. 2 years later, with Daniel's help, my divorce was finalized. Leah and I moved back into my mother's house, the home where I grew up. We had peace, but even then, Owen and his parents wouldn't give up. They still sent letters, trying to manipulate us. But it didn't matter anymore. Leah and I had a new life now, and we weren't looking back. I love you, come back. Owen kept sending letters and was even seen loitering near Leah's school. Worried for our safety, we asked Attorney Daniel to file for a restraining order. After that, things finally became quiet. From what I heard, Owen and his parents did build the 3-family house, but their plan backfired. My in-laws, who had already retired, had to go back to work in a factory just to survive. Owen struggled to find a job and ended up doing manual labor. Neighbors told me that their house was filled with constant arguments. Their endless fighting made them unpopular in the neighborhood, and people started avoiding them. Meanwhile, Leah and I built a new life together. One day, Leah said, I want to study abroad in the country where Grandma grew up. That's when I cut ties with Owen completely. Using a small part of my mother's inheritance, Leah and I moved overseas. I found work as a teacher, and Leah started school. She seems happier than ever. As I watch her grow and thrive, I know my mother would be proud. I hope these peaceful days continue forever. In a fancy apartment in Atlanta, Mary Simons stood by the window, looking at the city as the sun went down. She was 43 years old and a well-respected investment analyst on Wall Street. On her desk lay a wedding invitation, her own. She was getting married to her fiancé. Mary took a deep breath, thinking about her past marriage. The word marriage brought both happiness and painful memories, especially with her family. The most complicated relationship she had was with her sister, Laura. Since childhood, their bond had been filled with competition and jealousy. Laura was the child everyone wanted, while Mary was the unexpected one, born just 11 months later. At least, that's what their grandmother, Angela, always said. As Mary thought about her childhood, she remembered how her parents, Scott and Emma, clearly favored Laura. In family photos, Laura always sat in the center, while Mary was placed on the side. On vacations, they would often take Laura and leave Mary behind with her grandparents. One summer, when Mary was 7, she overheard her parents talking about taking Laura to Disneyland. Her heart filled with excitement, but that happiness didn't last long. Sorry, Mary, her mother Emma had said. This time, we're only taking Laura. You'll get your turn next time. Mary tried not to cry. But I want to go too, she said. Her father, Scott, spoke firmly. Mary, just stay with your grandparents. Laura needs special attention. The words special attention stuck with Mary. Why was Laura always special? Why was Mary always second? But next time never came. Mary spent that summer alone at her grandparents' house, staring at family photos. The loneliness she felt that day left a deep scar in her heart. As she grew older, around 7 or 8, she started to realize how unfairly she was treated. Slowly, sadness and anger began to grow inside her. The only comfort she had was spending time with her grandparents. Her grandfather, Larry, and grandmother, Angela, gave her the love she craved. Mary, you're special, Angela would say with a warm smile. But sometimes, being special can feel heavy. Stay strong. Her grandfather, Larry, introduced her to math and science, showing her a world where numbers made sense, unlike the unfair world around her. What her grandfather taught her became Mary's safe place. There, she could learn and explore without worrying about her parents or her sister watching her every move. One day, her grandfather showed her an old telescope. "This was passed down from my father," he said with a nostalgic smile. "When you look at the stars, you realize how small our problems really are." That night, Mary and her grandfather sat on the rooftop, gazing at the stars. In the vast universe, she felt small, yet she also sensed endless possibilities. "Knowledge is power, Mary," her grandfather often told her. "It's a treasure no one can take from you." Books became Mary's escape from reality. She tried to prove her worth by solving math problems, but to her parents, she was just a good girl, never special. "Why can't you be more outgoing like Laura?" her father, Scott, would say. "Go outside and make some friends." But for Mary, the outside world was scary. Her classmates called her weird and made fun of her. Laura, being popular, never stood up for her. In fact, sometimes she joined in. One day, during a school break, Mary was sitting alone in the library, reading. Suddenly, a group of classmates surrounded her. "Look, she's reading alone again," one of them laughed. "Don't you have any friends?" Mary's face turned red, and she didn't know what to say. At that moment, she saw Laura walking by. For a second, Mary thought her sister might help. But instead, Laura glanced at her coldly and said, "Leave her alone. My sister is a bit special." The group burst into laughter. Mary grabbed her book and ran to the bathroom, crying. The pain of being betrayed by her own sister hurt more than anything her classmates had said. As they got older, things between Mary and Laura became even more complicated. Mary did well in school, while Laura was charming and popular. Every time Mary answered a question in class, her classmates would sigh and mumble, "There she goes again." Even though she was proud of her intelligence, loneliness followed her everywhere. She spent most of her time in libraries and science labs, trying to find her value in learning. One day, during a chemistry experiment, Mary made a surprising discovery. Her results went against what the textbook said. Excited, she shared her findings with her teacher, who praised her talent. But her happiness didn't last long. Laura suddenly appeared. "Are you trying to get attention with your weird experiments again?" she said. "I'll tell Mom and Dad." Mary was speechless. Why couldn't her sister just be happy for her? Why did she always try to bring her down? That evening, her parents scolded her. "Don't bother the teacher with unnecessary things," her father said sternly. "Just sit quietly in class," her mother added. Mary cried in her room, wondering why she was never enough. Why was her talent treated like something bad? That night, Mary made a promise to herself. She would find a place where her abilities were valued. She would become so successful that no one could ignore her worth. One day, Mary made friends with some girls from her art class. Unlike others, they understood and accepted her for who she was. For the first time, Mary felt the warmth of real friendship. After school, they would meet at a cafe, talking excitedly about art, science, and philosophy. Mary shared her thoughts on everything, and her friends were impressed by her knowledge. "Mary, you're really interesting," her friend Kathleen said. "I wish I had gotten to know you sooner." For the first time, Mary felt like she belonged somewhere. But this happiness didn't last long. Laura couldn't stand seeing Mary happy. She didn't want Mary to be close to anyone else. One afternoon, she walked up to Mary's group. "Hey, let me join too," Laura said sweetly. Mary's friends hesitated. They knew how Laura had treated Mary in the past. "Sorry, Laura," Kathleen said kindly, "but this group is..." Before she could finish, Laura's expression changed. Her face twisted with anger. "Why won't you let me join?" she yelled. Her voice echoed down the hallway. "You're the worst, sister." That night, Laura ran to their parents, crying. She told them Mary was being mean and wouldn't let her join the group. As always, their parents took Laura's side. "Mary, why can't you be more kind?" her mother, Emma, scolded. "Laura is your sister. You should get along better." Mary tried to stand by her decision, but it wasn't easy. She cried into her pillow at night, wondering why she always had to suffer. Why couldn't her parents see her side? But this experience made Mary stronger. She realized her worth wasn't in what others thought, it was in herself. She focused even more on her studies, determined to build a future where no one could ignore her. She set a goal: to succeed on Wall Street. That would be her revenge and her way of proving herself. In her final year of high school, Mary won a national mathematics competition. Her name spread across the school, and she was even mentioned in the local newspaper. For the first time, she felt the joy of being recognized for her abilities. But this happiness didn't last either. At home, Laura became jealous. She feared that their parents would start paying attention to Mary instead of her. So Laura told a lie. One day, she told their parents that Mary had a secret boyfriend and was using drugs. Scott, their father, confronted Mary. His face was filled with anger. "Is it true?" he demanded, his voice shaking. "I can't believe you would do something like this," Scott shouted. Mary tried desperately to explain, but he refused to listen. Emma just stood there, silent. "Why won't you believe me?" Mary cried, tears running down her face. "I've always been honest." You only believe Laura's words. But their parents didn't change their minds. To them, Laura was always right, and Mary was always the problem. Filled with anger and heartbreak, Mary turned to Laura. "Why would you lie like that?" she yelled. "What have I ever done to you?" Instead of answering, Laura suddenly pushed Mary. Mary lost her balance and hit her head against a shelf. Pain shot through her skull as blood ran from her nose. But the worst pain wasn't from the injury, it was from the betrayal. Their parents rushed Mary to the hospital, but even then, they defended Laura. "It was an accident," Scott kept saying. Laura didn't mean it. Sitting alone in the hospital waiting room, Mary felt numb. The pain in her head mixed with the pain in her heart, and tears welled in her eyes. A nurse walked over and spoke gently. "Are you okay? What happened?" Her voice was warm, kind, so different from what Mary was used to. Mary hesitated. She had never told anyone about her family's problems before. But something inside her broke. She couldn't hold it in any longer. Taking a deep breath, she told the nurse everything. The nurse listened carefully, nodding now and then. When Mary finished, she spoke softly. "I'm worried about you. Would you like me to call Child Protective Services?" Mary froze for a moment. Then slowly she nodded. Maybe this was the only way things could change. When CPS got involved, it caused a huge uproar in the family. Her parents were furious. "Why did you do that?" Emma screamed in the hospital hallway. "How could you let strangers interfere in our family business? You betrayed us." Scott looked at Mary coldly. "You are a disgrace to this family. Don't ever come back." Tears ran down Mary's face as she listened to their cruel words. It felt like her heart was being ripped apart. But at the same time, she felt something else, a strange sense of freedom. After that, Mary moved in with her grandparents. Her parents barely fought to keep her. In fact, they seemed relieved that she was gone. For the first time in her life, Mary felt what it was like to be in a real home. Every morning, she woke up to the smell of her grandmother's cooking. Every night, she sat outside with her grandfather, talking about life while looking at the stars. "Life isn't easy, Mary," her grandfather told her. "But every time you overcome something, you get stronger. Never forget, you have endless potential." When she graduated from high school, Mary earned a full scholarship to Clark Atlanta University. The moment she stepped onto campus, a wave of emotion hit her. Here, she could finally begin again. She could finally start a new life. No one here knew about her past. No one saw her as Laura's sister.
She was just Mary.
University life was full of surprises. Her hard work and intelligence were quickly noticed, and soon, even her professors recognized her abilities. Her friends respected her for who she was and appreciated her unique personality. Mary especially shined in her economics classes. Her sharp thinking and problem-solving skills impressed everyone. One day, a well-known professor stopped her. "Mary, your latest report was excellent," he said with a smile. "You have great potential. Have you ever thought about working on Wall Street?" Mary's eyes lit up. This was the opportunity she had been waiting for. But sometimes, when she thought about her family, she felt a painful tightness in her chest. Her parents barely contacted her, just a birthday card once a year. She never heard from Laura. On some nights, Mary would look through old family photos. Pictures of her parents and Laura, all smiling, while she stood on the edge. Every time she saw those photos, her heart filled with complicated emotions. In her second year of college, Mary met Jerry in the library. He was a law student who understood her quiet nature and sharp mind. They got along instantly and, over time, became a couple. "You're an incredible person, Mary," Jerry told her one evening. "I can't believe your family doesn't see that." Being with Jerry changed her. She finally felt what it was like to be loved for who she was. It also made her think more about her family. "Should I forgive them?" Mary asked Jerry one night. He thought carefully before answering. "That's up to you. But I've heard that forgiving isn't for the other person. It's for yourself. It lifts the weight off your heart." Mary thought about his words for a long time. Slowly, something inside her began to change. After graduating, Mary got a job at a top investment bank on Wall Street. Her skills and insights were valued, and she quickly rose through the ranks. By her mid-40s, she had made a name for herself in the industry. One day, she was given a huge project, one that could define her career. She worked tirelessly, staying up late to prepare the best presentation possible. On the day of the meeting, the conference room was filled with top executives. Mary took a deep breath and started speaking. Her analysis was sharp, her ideas fresh and innovative. When she finished, there was silence. Then the CEO stood up and started clapping. One by one, the other executives joined in. "Great job, Ms. Carter," the CEO said with a big smile. "Thanks to you, our company is about to make a major breakthrough." At that moment, Mary felt truly recognized. Tears filled her eyes. All the years of hard work had finally paid off. Meanwhile, Jerry had become a successful lawyer, working on human rights cases. Despite their busy schedules, they always supported each other. After 9 years together, Jerry proposed. Jerry knelt in front of Mary's favorite painting at the museum. "Mary, I love you," he said, his voice shaking. "I want to spend my life with you. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Mary's eyes as she nodded. "Yes, gladly." That night, as they talked about their future, an important topic came up. Should she invite her family to the wedding? Mary called her grandparents first. When she told them the news, their joyful voices made her tear up. "Your happiness means everything, Mary," her grandmother said warmly. "You deserve this." But reaching out to her parents and Laura wasn't easy. Years of pain and anger made her hesitate as she tried to dial their numbers. She started the call several times, but stopped each time. The memories of the past clashed with her emotions in the present. In the end, Mary decided to send a short message. She wrote and rewrote it several times before finally settling on a simple text. "Dad, Mom, and Laura, I'm engaged to a man named Jerry. Our wedding is on the 16th of next month. You are welcome to attend if you'd like." After pressing send, Mary's heart pounded. The next few days were filled with anxiety. She couldn't concentrate at work or sleep at night. Jerry gently reassured her. "It's okay, Mary. No matter what their response is, I'm here with you." As expected, her parents' reply was cold. "Congratulations. Your father should walk you down the aisle," her mother wrote. It wasn't a warm message, it was a demand. Laura's response was even worse. "Are you trying to embarrass me by getting married before your older sister? You always think only of yourself." Reading those messages, Mary felt her chest tighten with pain. Even after all these years, nothing had changed. It hurt to realize that she had no real family who was truly happy for her. She turned to Jerry for advice. "Should I invite them? But if they come, they might ruin the wedding." Jerry took her hand. "I'll support whatever choice you make. Just make sure it's a choice you won't regret. This is our day, but it could also be a chance to make peace with them." Mary thought about it for a long time. Inside her, a battle raged between the painful memories of her childhood and a small hope for reconciliation. 3 weeks before the wedding, she made her final decision. She would invite her parents and Laura, but they would not play important roles. She called her father. "Dad, I've asked Grandpa to walk me down the aisle," she said. There was a long silence. Then, her father's voice burst through the phone, full of anger. "What a selfish daughter we raised." Mary's hands trembled, but she took a deep breath and answered firmly. "Yes, you raised me," she said. "But it was my grandparents who truly loved me. And on the most important day of my life, I want to be with the people who were there for me. I want someone by my side who truly supports me." For a moment, Mary's father was silent. But then, his anger returned. "You are no longer our daughter." When the call ended, Mary cried for a long time. But these weren't just tears of sadness. They were also tears of freedom. Years of buried emotions were finally being released. Jerry didn't say anything. He just held her, letting his presence be her comfort. As the wedding day got closer, Mary kept busy. She picked out her dress, chose flowers, and handled all the final details. For a little while, she almost forgot about her family. But a week before the wedding, another painful surprise came.
Her phone rang.
It was her father. "Mary, I need to talk to you," he said, his voice tense. "About your wedding. I can't make it." Mary's heart nearly stopped. "What do you mean?" "Laura was just promoted to vice president at a big company. The celebration is on the same day as your wedding." His voice faded, but Mary didn't need to hear more. It was the same story all over again. Laura always came first. Even on the most important day of her life, they chose her sister. "I understand," Mary said coldly. "Enjoy yourselves." She ended the call and fell to the floor, her body shaking. Jerry rushed over and held her tightly. "It's okay, Mary. I'm here with you." His voice gave her strength, but that night, Mary couldn't sleep. She stood by the window, staring at the city lights. Her mind was filled with old memories. The days she wasn't taken to Disneyland. The times her parents ignored her school achievements. The punishments she got for Laura's lies. The moment they threw her out after CPS got involved. She took a deep breath. Enough. She didn't need her parents' approval. She didn't need Laura's validation. She had built her own life. She had Jerry. She had real friends. She had her grandparents, who had always loved her without conditions. The next morning, Mary woke up feeling different. Stronger. "Jerry," she said with determination, "we'll have our wedding as planned. Even if my parents and Laura don't come, we have our real family." Jerry smiled gently.
"Yes.
We have each other. And you have your grandparents and friends who love you." On the wedding day, Mary walked down the aisle, holding on to her grandfather Larry's arm. She wore a simple white dress with tiny flowers woven into her hair. The venue was filled with people who truly cared about them. Her parents and Laura were absent, but Mary didn't feel empty. Jerry stood at the altar, his loving gaze meeting hers. She had everything she needed. "We are creating a new family," Mary whispered to herself. "A family filled with love and understanding." As she and Jerry exchanged vows, she looked into his eyes and saw nothing but unconditional love. "I vow to love, respect, and cherish Mary Simon, in sickness and in health, for better or worse," Jerry said, his voice full of emotion. Mary repeated the words, and in that moment, she felt completely free. At the reception, Mary danced with a bright smile, surrounded by her closest friends. Her grandparents watched her with pride. Jerry's parents welcomed Mary warmly, treating her as if she were their own daughter. Yet, deep down, the absence of her parents and Laura left a small ache in her heart. During a break from dancing, Mary stood by the window, looking out at the city. Suddenly, a familiar voice called her name. "Mary." She turned around, startled. It was Laura. Her voice was unsteady. "I want to apologize." Mary was shocked. Laura stood there in an elegant dress, but she looked exhausted. "Laura, why are you here?" Mary asked, confused. Laura lowered her gaze. "I left my promotion party early," she said softly. "I felt I needed to be here." A wave of emotions rushed through Mary. Anger, sadness, and a small flicker of hope. "I truly regret everything," Laura continued. "I've always been jealous of you, your strength, your intelligence, and the love you received." Mary stayed silent, listening. I know it won't be easy to fix our relationship, Laura admitted. But if you can forgive me, I'd like to start over. Mary took a deep breath. Her emotions clashed inside her. Laura, I can't forgive you that easily, Mary said softly. But I'm glad you came. Maybe we can take small steps forward. Tears filled Laura's eyes. Slowly, she reached out her hand. After a moment's hesitation, Mary took it. They stood side by side in silence, gazing at the city lights, a quiet symbol of a new beginning. 3 months after the wedding, Mary received a letter from her parents. Mary, we made a big mistake. We deeply regret not attending your wedding. We don't know if you can forgive us, but if possible, we'd like to meet and talk. Reading the words, Mary felt a mix of emotions. Should she forgive them? Or should she keep her distance? She didn't reply right away. Instead, she turned to Jerry. What do you think? She asked. Jerry smiled gently. Maybe it's okay to wait until you feel ready. There's no rush. Mary nodded.
Yes.
For the first time in her life, she didn't feel pressured to make a decision. She could take her time. She could face her feelings honestly. A new life, a new family, and the possibility of making peace with the past. So many choices lay ahead. Taking a deep breath, Mary decided to step forward, ready for whatever the future held. She also made another important decision. She would start therapy to heal from old wounds and build healthier relationships. I have a loving husband, wonderful friends, and grandparents who have always loved me unconditionally, Mary reminded herself. And for the first time, she truly believed it. I am not alone. I can get through this. A new chapter in Mary's life was beginning. There would still be challenges ahead, but she had the strength to face them. More importantly, she had a true family. She had learned that family wasn't just about blood, it was about love, support, and understanding. Those were the bonds that truly mattered. Mary gazed out the window at the bright Atlanta skyline. A new day, new challenges, and new experiences were waiting for her. But for now, a quiet sense of happiness filled her heart. Jerry wrapped his arms around her from behind. What are you thinking about? He asked softly. Mary smiled. Our future, and making peace with the past. We'll face it together, Jerry said gently. Held in her husband's embrace, Mary felt safe. She had built her life through her own choices, and now, she was ready to move forward with her new family. This wasn't the end. It was a new beginning. A new chapter in Mary's life was about to unfold.